Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська Українська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Platforms such as UA Weapons and Jomini W on Twitter and the Enforcer channel allowed people around the world to follow the war in a depth and a way that had never happened before. Retired General David Petraeus.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 7-11 of the news. This is not the 7-Eleven convenience store, but this is the YouTube stream, and also it's good to see you all once again. And we've already hit $1,000. Let's go!
Hey, let's go! We already hit $1,000, literally just seconds before we finally went live on air, which is a huge milestone because that means that we've already made it nearly a third of the way to the fundraiser goal tonight. And tonight's fundraiser goal is for Razom For Ukraine. Razom For Ukraine is truly an amazing nonprofit that has been helping out in Ukraine for a very long time, and every bit of support that they are able to receive helps them to continue to do incredible things. They provide medical aid to Ukrainian hospitals, they provide food to Ukrainian citizens that have been displaced because of the war, and they also do really cool projects like providing stipends and grants and scholarships for Ukrainian veterans who are, or actually Ukrainian soldiers themselves right now in the war, so that way they can get a college education and be better off for a career in the future outside of the armed forces, giving them a token of appreciation for the massive sacrifice and service that they have given, not just to Ukraine, but the rest of the Western world. We have huge news tonight, not just the fundraiser, which of course is always here every single Sunday, but we got to hear of something today that finally came true. A certain kind of tank, a brand new tank, has been seen in the air. Oh my god, Ed Olsen threw in a 500! Good lord,
what's going on? Look
dude,
at
that is insane. I think we've almost made it up to 2K. Yeah, we almost have. Oh my lord. We might actually have to bump up the goal here in a little bit, but beyond that, moving on down into the area of Avdiivka, we got to see something that truly blew me away and brought a smile to my face. It is a brand new tank that the Ukrainians have never used before. It's one that we've seen here and there, and a little rumor that it may possibly get used on the front lines of Ukraine, but we never got confirmation until today. A tiny, itty-bitty snippet came out from a news agency showing that the M1A1 Abrams is officially now in frontline service, most likely with the 47th Brigade near the northern flank of Avdiivka. We got to see this today in full form. A very small clip. Here's a picture of that clip, but that is a whole-on M1A1 Abrams out there on the field, and it's actually in frontline service. It's the first time ever that we have seen an M1A1 Abrams in actual frontline service in Ukraine. We know that they arrived months ago, and we have seen that they've continued to train on Ukrainian battlefield, well, not Ukrainian battlefields, but Ukrainian training grounds, and then we saw several pictures of M1A1s that were in the reserve lines up in the northeastern area around Kupyansk, but we have never seen one in frontline action until today. And it was actually accompanied by a tiny little clip by this news company showing this M1 Abrams moving around at least a little bit. We got to see this from inside of the cupola of another Abrams, but check this out. The first time an Abrams has been seen on the move near a front line. Absolutely incredible stuff.
Gotta say, it looks much more imposing than their previous tanks they were using. Like, it looks massive and also intimidating compared to the other ones.
Dude, this thing, the little Russian tanks are like, the Abrams is like, I'm going to flay you. And it's like, oh my god. The thing is a beast. It's, I believe an Abrams is close to the 60-ton mark, so it's a very heavy main battle tank, and it also packs one hell of a punch. Just like Darren Maynard's donation to the fundraiser, which was 200 New Zealand dollars. Unbelievable. But moving on from that, this Abrams is truly incredible. We know that the Ukrainians have been provided with exactly 30 of these. There were supposed to be 31 of them, but apparently the 31st Abrams never made it into Ukraine, and we only know of the 30 that are inside of the country. Beyond that, however, M1 Abrams, M1A1 Abrams in particular, are pretty good main battle tanks. Of course, many people would remember the M1A1 Abrams amazing rap sheet from the Gulf War and also the invasion of Iraq, which it did fairly good in. But oddly enough, this is something a little bit crazy. The Abrams actually claimed less kills in the Gulf War than the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle did. The Bradley infantry fighting vehicle actually scored more kills on armored vehicles than the Abrams ever did. Just like Mark the Kinetic Possum, who threw in 500 New Zealand dollars, getting the fundraiser up to $2,500. We are breaking necks tonight. And not only that, the Ukrainians are breaking ankles and Russian hopes and dreams. We have started to hear at least a rumor on Russian Telegram channels that there is a decent amount of fear about going up against an Abrams. Of course, an Abrams is not indestructible, just like the Challenger 2 and the Leopard 2 have also proven to not be indestructible tanks. They are still very formidable. They are incredibly good at what they do. M1A1 Abrams and a lot of the Western main battle tanks have very good armor. They also have very good imaging systems and also a pretty high-powered main cannon to be able to fire with. Also, the M1A1 Abrams, considering it has a smoothbore 120mm Rheinmetall gun, a lot like a Leopard 2A5 or a Leopard 2A4 would have, has about the same kind of, at least in theory, when not considering the ammunition itself, the same kind of firepower that a Leopard 2 would have, and Leopard 2s have been in service with the Ukrainian army for a very long while at this point. It's about to be going on a year now that Leopard 2s have been in service with Ukraine. But beyond that, this tank is really starting to turn heads in the area of Avdiivka, particularly because from what we understand, this Abrams is attached to the 47th Magura. The 47th Magura is one of the brand new brigades that was raised by Ukraine during this war to try and create a almost entirely westernized fighting brigade. It would use nothing but the finest Western equipment that was provided to Ukraine, and therefore it would be one of Ukraine's elite units. That's why it's been moved into the area of Krasnoyarivka and Stepove, and it's been there for months now, is because this is the best place for the 47th Brigade to shine. It has some of the best equipment that foreign nations could provide, and because of that, they are the ones to be the anchor of the north and to continue to hold the northern Avdiivka flank against the ongoing Russian onslaught. We also got to see a little bit of that Russian onslaught today as the 31st Brigade engaged a massive Russian column just north of Krasnoyarivka, appearing to try and actually move a little bit more towards the north and then west to the village of Ocheretny, but we got to see that it was smacked down pretty quickly. Here's the clip. Man, we got that trap.
Chad music.
We got that trap remix up in here, and call this a trap remix because the Ukrainians are about to trap this Russian column and then remix their brains into soup. But we're watching the Russian column continuing to advance through the field, and we're now seeing them get picked off one by one by the 31st Brigade's firepower, mostly through artillery and drone strikes. We see another tank getting...
Call them trappers because they're dealing out the pain.
Dude, what is up with their jokes tonight, dude? Like, you're like coming up with like the corn, straight up corn. But we can see here a Russian running for it. We can see the Ukrainians continuing to land artillery on this column. And man, as one can see, the Russian advance failed. Not only did it fail, it also was completely destroyed from what we can tell. It doesn't appear that any armored units survived the push. It appears that they were all knocked out, and the infantry most likely dismounted the APCs, and the ones that survived retreated off the field, probably to be reintegrated into another assault unit, or at least that's happening right now, so that way they'll be a part of the next assault, probably happen in about another day or two. But beyond that, another entire Russian attack column was destroyed just north of Avdiivka. From what we understand at the moment, that did not have an M1A1 Abrams involved in that defensive by the Ukrainians. But still, it is going to get very close to the Abrams being spotted near the lines. We have seen Ukrainian Leopard 2 A6s used by the 47 Magura in the area of Stepove. We have also seen, famously, the American-provided M2 Bradleys in the area, knocking out a T-90M and just absolutely bullying Russia's finest main battle tank. We have not seen the Abrams yet in action. To be quite honest with y'all, the M1A1 Abrams and most main battle tanks very rarely ever go and fight another main battle tank. That very rarely ever happened during war, and whenever it does, it's actually a pretty special instance. Usually, we get to see other kinds of interesting things going on out there in the world, like, for example, infantry support, which is something that the Ukrainians and really most nations love to use. You know, they're kind of tanks. Well, I'm trying to read an interesting comment that was thrown in. But one thing I gotta say, it is great to know that the Ukrainians are continuing to hold the area of Avdiivka and also continuing to introduce some of the newest and cutting-edge vehicles that can be provided or can really be used by the Ukrainians. But moving on from that and into the city of Avdiivka itself, while the M1A1 Abrams has been introduced, it does appear that there's been a little bit of a devolving situation on Ukraine's northern flank, as the Russians did take a noticeable amount of ground through the open fields heading to Avdiivka city, and it now looks like Russian forces, according to Deep State UA, have finally made it into some of the first city blocks on the northern side of Avdiivka, and they're now engaging Ukrainian forces there and also inside of the coke plant. We do not know why such a large advance happened today. There wasn't really a lot of information about that, but nevertheless, we are going to be keeping a very close eye on it and really trying to make sure that this doesn't devolve into a terrible situation. As long as the coke plant stands, and as long as the main roadway into Avdiivka is not interrupted or completely overrun by Russian forces, the Ukrainians should be able to hold Avdiivka for however long this battle may last. But if the Russians are to take Stepove and move towards Semenivka and Orlivka, or they are to punch through this area right in between the coke plant and the city of Avdiivka and reach this road right here, that could spell a disaster for the Ukrainian defenders that are inside of the city and force them into a withdrawal. But at the moment, it doesn't appear that that's going to be happening. But things are getting very close to happening. We saw that today some volunteers were entering the city of Avdiivka, and a Russian glide bomb hit right on the side of the road when they were entering the city. Here's the clip. We see them driving in, and the bomb hit right there, flinging up debris.
That was close.
Oh, very close. I mean, it was like 70 yards away.
Those are some mighty fine windshield wipers. You just wipe that mud right off.
Блять, товарищи, с днем народжения, блядь.
Да.
And we can see them later getting some snacks. I would say they deserve it.
Вот так, блядь.
What were they eating? Pizza or something?
Let's see what they were eating. What in the world was it?
Так, блядь.
I can't tell. I have absolutely no idea, to be honest. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on such a simple question because I cannot tell at all. But still.
I guess that's the Ukrainian way. Dodge death and then show up at McDonald's and get your Big Mac same day.
Man, they went up here. They said, yeah, I like 2 number 9s, 2 number 3s. And then the person behind the counter said, man, my job is tough. And the soldier said, if only you knew. But anyways, moving on from that little clip and into our next one down near Vidyane, we also got to see a Ukrainian Leopard 2A4 near the front lines. Pretty similar in firepower to an M1A1 Abrams. They pretty much use the exact same gun. Just to clarify that, the US M1A1 and M1A2 variants of the Abrams both use a 120mm main gun, a smoothbore main gun, that is a license-built variant of the Rheinmetall, I believe it's the L44 120mm smoothbore main gun that's on the Leopard 2A4 and the Leopard 2A5. So practically the same as far as firepower goes, and because the guns, well, because most NATO tanks use the exact same caliber, which is 120mm, and they're all smoothbore guns, the ammunition technically is interchangeable. You can use German ammunition in an American Abrams, and you can use American ammunition in a German Leopard. That is entirely possible to do, but we don't really get a lot of information whether that's common in Ukraine or not. But beyond that, we did get to see a picture of the Leopard 2A4 right down here, and of course, another brave defender of the front lines in this area. But, really quickly, let me make sure to take care of that because I saw someone bringing in politics, which is a big no-no. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the area of Avdiivka, at least its front lines, and moving a little bit behind the lines, we also got to see another kind of Leopard on the fields of Ukraine. And this was a very interesting story. This was United 24's documentary on the Leopard 2A6s that are in service with the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Many of y'all may have seen a similar documentary about the Leopard 2A6 and how some of them were starting to run into repair issues. That was actually released by Radio Free Europe. This was made by United 24 just a day ago, talking about the incredible tankers that run these Leopard 2A6s, and also the technological masterpiece that the Leopard 2A6 main battle tank is. So, here's the clip.
Once during our mission, 3 enemy tanks
Hey,
tried to
we
intercept
hit goal!
us.
Let's go!
Hey, let's go! We hit the goal! And record
Yes,
time,
sir.
28 minutes to raise $3,000. One hell of a goal right there. Impressive stuff. But
Very impressive.
in honor of that, we are going to make sure to get back to this documentary for y'all. But let us know, do y'all think, maybe, possibly, that the goal should be raised? let us know.
Heard that Leopard 2 was in action, they turned around and fled.
Zahar. Age 35 years old. Profession Leopard 2A6 tank commander. He used to have a completely different job.
I used to enrich valuable minerals. I made dust out of a 2-centimeter stone, and then it was turned into steel.
Now he turns enemies into dust.
Dang.
Once we
That's a
assaulted
raw line.
enemy positions and worked with Bradleys. One of them was blown up, blocking our path through a minefield. Infantry were already on the enemy positions, engaging in combat. Then from our position, we started blasting at Russians for 2 to 3 hours, using up all the ammunition. The supplies were delivered to the infantry, allowing them to clear the rest. Later, we met these guys. They only had 2 men injured. They said, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here.
Zahar is the commander of the Leopard 2A6 tank, one of the most modern in Ukraine. He had something to compare it with. He worked with the Soviet T-64 and T-72 before Leopard 2.
Leopard is spacious and everything is very convenient. Screens, joysticks, everything is so simple. Everything is made for humans. In the T-72, everything is uncomfortable, with minimal space. And there are all these transistors, automatics, damn, it all falls out. Rattles, everything is unreliable. Leopard, everything is smooth. The optics allow seeing far. We work at the maximum distance, sometimes up to 3,600 meters. For Soviet technology, a kilometer was already a good score. But here I see everything perfectly. It has maneuverability, it's fast, it has reverse gear. Great.
However, there is another important difference between Soviet and Western armored vehicles. In the war in Ukraine, Russian tank crews compete in a very odd discipline, whose turret will fly higher when the ammunition explodes. Here are a few nominees. 1, 2, 3. In many Soviet tanks, the projectiles are arranged in a circle, and once they're hit, the entire
That's called a carousel. I'm not even kidding. I'm just
storage
playing around.
explodes, leaving no chance of survival. For Russia, preserving the lives of its soldiers is a secondary task. For NATO technologies, it's a priority.
Leopard added 3 birthdays to my life. Tanks I worked on have been hit 3 times, but the entire crew remained undamaged. For the first time during combat, the power cable was severed, and the tank just died out. There was no light, no communication. Fortunately, the electronics didn't affect the engine. I climbed out of the tank and shouted to the driver in the flashes or the light from the rockets where to go through that minefield, and we managed to get out backwards. The second time, a Bradley in front of us exploded. It was on fire, and shells were exploding. We started moving away, and at that moment, a Landsat drone hit us. For the third time, we drove over a mine. A 60-ton tank just bounced. The track broke, but everyone was intact. Well, the fourth time, they just made a hole with an anti-tank guided missile, but everything still worked. And because of this, among other things, I'm very confident in my crew. Despite everything, we all get into the tank together and go to perform combat tasks.
The Leopard 2 crew consists of 4 people: tank commander, loader, gunner, and driver mechanic.
My driver doesn't even have a regular driver's license.
Man,
Can't
what's up with
drive
this
a car.
music, man? Like, I'm not lying. Like, they are absolutely bumping this whole entire documentary. I'm like, oh my
It's so
lord.
loud. Like, you can't even hardly hear them talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's loud as hell, but I'm going to let this thing keep going, but I just had to note that. I'm so sorry, y'all, if y'all were like, man, what is this, like a trap beat? Apparently, I mean, we have no control over their music, but we're going to let the clip continue.
Here, he's a tank driver, and during training in Germany, they even nicknamed him Kamikaze. We went to places even the Germans were afraid to go.
Alexei, specialization, Leopard tank driver.
The manual says its maximum speed is 72 kilometers per hour, but for some reason our speedometer once showed 80.
Leopard 2 hits really accurately. The declared shooting range is 4 kilometers, and it is true in practice. At 3 kilometers, its hit rate is almost 100%.
And the loader, most importantly, must be strong. The physical load on him is substantial. After all, he has to work with these 30-kilogram shells.
The Leopard doesn't have an automatic loading system, so a person has to load the projectiles.
The breech opens manually. We open the so-called refrigerator, take out a shell, and that's it, the gun is loaded. During work, we make sure these doors are closed. Then, once the turret is hit, a special system directs all the flame upwards, and it doesn't get into the turret. We have two main types of shells, armor-piercing and high-explosive. The first is used against heavy equipment, the second against lightly armored targets and infantry. In training we loaded a shell in 5 seconds, in battle no one counts time, but I think it's even faster. There is also a 7.62mm machine gun, with an effective range of 1.5 kilometers, which also works well.
By the way, the 7.62 machine gun he's talking about isn't any machine gun. It is the modern predecessor to the MG42, the MG3. So, you know, just adding that in there, once again, the Germans coming in clutch. You know, they're coming in with that kind of firepower that makes you sing, "Geschickt, weil like man in it." But anyways.
It's a good machine overall, although now we are short on shells. We have to save high explosive ones. We need more shells.
And the commander is like a link that brings it all together. If the commander is good, if he finds an approach to everyone, then the crew will be intact and will work well.
This Leopard crew was formed during training in Germany.
It was very hard work. The 3-year course was shortened to 5 weeks. We studied from morning to night all day long. There was half a day off on Sunday, but overall everything shifted from night training to daytime training. But we coped.
Although, according to Zahar, NATO training somewhat differs from real battles in modern warfare.
You see, for them it was like this. Before the assault, aviation clears all enemy positions. Then artillery works. When a tank comes out, everything is already cleared. Tanks only do some minimal work. In our case, the tank does almost the main job. When we enter combat, there are still many targets that shoot at us, so it's a bit different from NATO.
This crew has already fought on the hottest fronts in the southern direction and near Avdiivka.
If there is enemy's equipment somewhere or we need to support the infantry, we go to a position, work, move away, and wait again. Sometimes we can drive a bit further away where the shelling is not so intense. There we can even get out of the tank. But sometimes we had to stay inside constantly for 12 to 14 hours.
However, Zahar considers shelling by far not the worst enemy of tanks in this war.
Mines, very damn insidious. Mines and ATGMs. FPVs are probably scarier for the Soviet tanks because they easily explode. It's not the same with Leopards. And if there is suddenly a tank against the tank standoff, I think the Leopard will win. In general, it's very interesting that everyone on the battlefield is afraid of tanks. But tankers are also scared. Everyone is so afraid of us that they want to destroy us badly. Every tanker who goes to the battlefield already deserves respect because he overcame himself. He goes to war. Every tanker understands that this mission may be his last.
Zahar, along with the crew and other Ukrainian tankers, continue to march into battle. And they need more tanks to protect not only their lives and their country, but also the values of the entire free world.
Well, that's the end of that clip, and giving us a little bit of a look and talk about the Leopard 2A6. And once again, like has always been shown, the Ukrainians absolutely love Western main battle tanks like the Leopard 2 due to their increased crew ergonomics, and not only that, their heightened technology compared to their Soviet counterparts. Now, some of y'all saw that there was a bot or two that came in during that documentary and let us know, because of course we are only simple people on YouTube who know nothing at all about the real world or the military. All I've done is read books, after all. I must be a stupid idiot. But I was told in the chat, and Matthew saw it too, that apparently the Abrams and the Leopard are nothing but mere scrap for the great and indomitable Soviet main battle tanks that have been absolutely ripping apart every single Western main battle tank that has been seen in Ukraine since the dawn of time. But, really quickly, I'm going to take you all to something else real quick, because I think this is always important to remember. Battle of... Let's see. Let me make sure to go get it. So, let me see here. Yeah, this one. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, right here. This one. Do any of y'all remember this? The Battle of 73 Easting on the 26th of February, 1991, which isn't that far away from now. That's only a few days away. But the Battle of 73 Easting was when the coalition forces of Desert Storm, or more so the Gulf War, came up against one of the largest tank units in the Iraqi army. It ended up being an absolute slaughter, and I'll just read y'all off the list here, because I would like y'all to remember that the Iraqis were using, at that time, some of the Soviet Union's finest equipment. T-72s, you name it, they had it. Let me see if I can actually get y'all a list here. Here's a T-62. Those are very commonly used in Ukraine these days. Let's see here. There was one of the only destroyed Bradleys. I think it was the only one that was destroyed. But I'm trying to find here. Let's see. Tanks at 73 Easting. Let me go pull that up. Iraqi tanks at 73 Easting. So let's see here. How many Iraqi tanks? What vehicles were used? Let's see. I don't want to know about the Americans. We know what they were using. But what about those dang Iraqis? What about them? Let's see here. Let's see. So, yes, I was correct. For some reason, the pictures do not show it on Wikipedia, but the Iraqis did have something along the lines of multiple T-72 tanks, a pretty decent plethora of modern, what we would even call right now in the war in Ukraine, modern Soviet main battle tanks. And what came out of this? It was a literal direct engagement in between American and British armor and Iraqi armor that was, of course, from the Soviet Union. And I have to keep this in mind, y'all. Many people think that Iraq is some kind of a backwater country with a poorly trained military. It was a conscript armed force that had just gotten out of a 10-year-long war with the Iranians. Battle-trained, battle-experienced. These guys were actually pretty on up there, and Iraq did have the 4th largest armed forces in the world. It was no joke at all to go up against the Iraqis during the Gulf War. But in the end, the casualties and losses were as follows. 6 U.S. service members were killed, 19 were wounded, and 1 M2 Bradley was lost to enemy fire. The amazing Soviet main battle tanks, which we still see being used by the Russians today, they did so well that 6 to 1,000 Iraqis were killed and wounded, another 1,300 were taken prisoner, 160 Soviet-era main battle tanks were destroyed, and of course at that time, the Soviet era still was pretty much existent, so really, top of the line, most advanced and modern main battle tanks were destroyed, about 160 of them, to really no American losses either, along with 180 armored personnel carriers, 12 artillery pieces, and 80 wheeled vehicles in several anti-aircraft artillery systems. As you can tell, the Battle of 73 Easting kind of showed all the way back in the 90s to very early 90s that there really isn't any way to actually compare the Soviet main battle tanks to modern Western NATO standard main battle tanks or even infantry fighting vehicles. They will get the floor wiped against them every single day of the week. People knew that back in the Gulf War, and people kidding themselves today and pretending like a Russian main battle tank is as good as a Western one and an actual face-to-face showdown, that is absolutely silly. The Soviet main battle tanks probably will be destroyed before they even see a American tank to engage it, because its optics are of an inferior quality, and usually that gives the Abrams and other Western main battle tanks the upper hand on identifying enemy targets and engaging them before the other side even knows what's going on. But moving on from that little documentary that we got to see about the Leopard 2A6, I just had to put that out there. I just had to put that small little tidbit out there, because it's not like we've never seen the West go up against Soviet-era main battle tanks or Russian main battle tanks of today's year. We have, and it did not go well for the Soviets, the Russians, or the Iraqis. But moving on from that, and out of the city of Avdiivka, we do have some pretty interesting things to talk about in the wider world. And also, sadly, really quickly, I have to tell y'all, we do not have a Middle East segment tonight. I do have the map as a link in the description below. We only had 2 markers on the map, though, for tonight, and both of them were really from yesterday and kind of like follow-throughs. So we're not going to be having a segment on that tonight. It's entirely about Ukraine. But outside of Ukraine and inside of Belarus, y'all are not going to believe it. The Wagner is truly, not only is it being integrated into the Rosguardia, and it's now a Rosguardia unit, it's also disappearing within Belarus as well. Y'all may remember that Belarus was kind of the little hideout for Wagner after the coup failed. Pretty much the entirety of remaining Wagner forces moved into Belarus and were allowed to hang out here and set up camps. There was approximately 7,000 Wagnerites that moved into Belarus into these military camps that were created, and they had been sitting there up until the present day from what we know. But according to the British Ministry of Defense, there are now fewer than 1,000 Wagner mercenaries that still remain in Belarus from the near 7,000 to 8,000 that had entered Belarus way back around 8 months last year. The Wagner is truly dying, and it's crazy to think that such a prominent and powerful mercenary organization that almost toppled the entire Russian government in the middle of last year now has practically ceased to exist in every single way, and it was dismantled so unceremoniously, it almost seems like it was a joke that they were a true fear to the Russian government back in the midsummer of last year. Absolutely.
It's a wonder they even have 1,000 left, because it's like, that's not enough troops to do anything. It's like, why don't they just go ahead and disband the rest of the 1,000 instead of just, staying together? I guess it's like a friend group at this point. It's not a mercenary group anymore.
It's a therapy session for all of them.
Yeah.
They sit around and go, that was cool
Anonymous.
once. Yeah, they're like, I was cool once, But also, speaking of which, one thing that's kind of a little important to take out of that is that certainly showed a lot of weakness in the Russian government when that coup happened. And not only that, even to this day, a lot of people have said that it's showing that the Russian government is having some very bad times, especially with internal control and also people vying for power. But one thing can also be said, that we have been able, because a lot of people were saying this yesterday, and a lot of people, because we had brought this up the other day, about General Valery Zaluzhny being replaced in the Ukrainian government, and people yesterday were still saying that that was, in fact, propaganda, and not true at all. Zelensky actually appeared today on an Italian television show to conduct an interview, and during the interview, they actually asked him, are you planning on removing General Valery Zaluzhny? And his answer wasn't just yes, it was, I plan on clearing house. And Matthew, I think you've heard a little bit more about that than I have, actually.
So yes, this was an actual interview that was conducted. I saw some folks saying that we need to wait for more information, but it came straight from the source. So we know for a fact that is what Zelensky is thinking and saying. And he's also confirming Zaluzhny's ousting. And like the enforcer said, he's calling for a quote-unquote leadership reset, which would entail getting rid of a lot of top government officials in Ukraine, which is a very big deal, to say the least. That's an understatement. It looks like the majority of people are unsure what this is going to look like, or if it's even a good plan. And it looks like it's pretty much even between the folks that think it's a good plan and also a concerning plan. And to me, I would honestly say it's a little bit concerning, because it's never good to upset a government at all, even in peacetime. But when you're in the middle of a war, it's not good to upset it even worse then. So unless there's some extremely compelling reason to do so, I would not do that. So right now, I haven't heard that reason. Maybe we'll hear a reason in the future, hopefully sooner than later, because Western allies are going to get more concerned themselves about it. But we'll have to wait and see. And then a small portion, actually a decent portion, said that they defer completely to Zelensky. Whatever he says goes. And that's also a fair perspective as well, I guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's pretty interesting to hear that he's removing someone. And I gotta say this, I'm seeing something in the comments that's an interesting trend. I'm seeing people now saying, because up until about yesterday, everyone was on board that Zaluzhny is one of the best commanders that Ukraine has ever seen. Probably one of the best commanders in the modern day. And now, I'm seeing people say, you fire generals who are incapable of succeeding. It blows me away how quickly people can change their mindset and turn on someone. When has Zaluzhny been a terrible general? I cannot think of a time that he has been. He's done amazing at conducting the defense of Kyiv, where the nation survived in the first place during the first few weeks of the war, where Ukraine could even sit there and talk about his dismissal today. Not only that, he conducted the defense of Kharkiv as well. He is the chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. He pretty much gets credit for every single success and every single failure that the Ukrainians have had. And out of all of the successes that Ukraine has had, they have only had one failure that I can think of, which is the southern offensive at Zaporizhia during the summer of last year. That's the only one I can think of. During every other part of the war, Ukraine has done nothing but far exceed expectations and absolutely wipe the floor against against the Russians. I see some people saying that he's too cautious. Where was that caution that we're saying that General Zaluzhny now has when the Balaklia counteroffensive began and the Ukrainians pushed the Russians back nearly 50 miles? Where was that caution when the Ukrainians were smacking the Russian 40-mile-long convoy with unbelievable impunity to the point that it pretty much ceased to exist before it could even disperse? Where in the world was that caution when the Moskva was sunk and attacks against the Black Sea Fleet occurred by missile forces of Ukraine? There has never been an element of caution or a great element of aggressiveness to one negative degree or another as far as General Zaluzhny has gone. He has truly been a well-balanced commander trying to come up with the best solutions possible while mitigating the losses of Ukrainian forces. You also have to remember that his hands are tied. In reality, the Russians do hypothetically have 3 times the recruitable manpower that Ukraine has. That is a massive weight on a commander to know that in the end, if the enemy is truly able to go until the depletion of their manpower and then give up on the war, that means that Ukraine will have to kill 3 Russian soldiers for every one of theirs that is lost, just to even make it to a draw at the end of the war. With all of these things on Zaluzhny's mind, I would have to personally say that I think it's not really smart to remove him because he's done an incredibly good job. Some people have also been talking about the greater leadership reset. Me personally, I don't know about that because, you know, of course, on this channel, we only talk about the military aspect and the strategic aspect of things that has been going on in the war in Ukraine. I don't know if that extends into other branches of the government, possibly where there's corruption or something along those lines.
Yes.
So I can't speak to the dismissal of those top officials. I can only speak about Zaluzhny.
So when Zelensky talks about a quote-unquote leadership reset, he's referring to people outside of the military structure. So I'm assuming that this is one way to look at it. Maybe Zelensky's thinking that if he gets rid of Zaluzhny, that decision alone is going to have so much fallout amongst some loyalists in the government that he'll have to get rid of some people, or otherwise they're going to try to usurp Zelensky's vision if they are allowed to remain in their position. That's one perspective. And then there's another perspective, which is a little bit more concerning, that Zelensky is simply getting tired of people disagreeing with him, and that maybe he's going to get rid of them preemptively. That's another option. But really, there's only a couple of reasons why he might be doing this, in my mind. So, you know, one reason is somewhat acceptable, and the other reason is not good either. So, I mean, at this point, I wish Zelensky would elaborate because he knows these are very major decisions to be making. And I think the Ukrainian public and also the world that's been helping fund the war effort deserves to know exactly why these decisions are being made at this time.
And I would say so. And that's something that has been quite concerning. And also, I have to say that I've seen something pretty interesting so far that's been going on. A lot of people have been dismissing these claims before it was really made official today, and also yesterday, and also by the U.S. government and the Department of Defense today, along with the State Department of the U.S. government, and really everyone else around the world, that this really is happening. Because the U.S. Made a statement today saying that we were not going to be involved in any way, shape, or form in dictating Ukrainian government reshuffling or restructuring at all. We said we were not getting involved in that whatsoever. So we know that this is an actual thing that is happening. And some people, I've noticed, because this always happens in every community, but some people try and look at the war through rose-tinted vision entirely, which is not bad. But at the same time, you have the possibility of falling into a Russian mindset pretty quickly when everything is perfect and everything's rose-tinted vision, and everything that every leader's every decision that the leader makes is a perfect decision. You start to run into issues because, for example, we don't know really why these leaders are being dismissed. We don't know if it's because of infighting in the background, maybe even a potential coup, or it could be something as simple as Zaluzhny has disagreed with Zelensky. Zelensky's feelings got hurt, and so he wants to remove him and have someone put in his position who will say, "Sure thing, boss, I'll do whatever." We don't know. Like, we have absolutely no idea. And I think it's important that while folks are pro-Ukrainian and I'm pro-Ukrainian, that we actually critically look at this and go, why is this happening? Because we have seen things in the past that we have said on this channel as well doesn't really look that great. Like when Ukraine officially conducted a litigation against Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and also, I believe, one of the Baltic states like Lithuania, because they weren't willing to accept Ukrainian grains that were destroying their agricultural industry. That is something back in the day that did not look that great. And a lot of people had some skepticism there, but a lot of people also said, well, that's Ukraine's right to act like they deserve to destroy the agricultural industries and possibly the economies of countries that have backed Ukraine through and through ever since the beginning of the war. But there is a point where you go from having to be just completely, you know, behind everything that's going on and then ask, why in the world is the entire government going to be reshuffled? Because
I think it'd be a much better way to view the Ukrainian government as a means to an end, because in my mind, what's most important to me is that Ukraine remains sovereign and that the civilians inside of Ukraine remain safe from Russian invasion. And to me, I don't want to get too attached to the Ukrainian government, and also Zelensky himself. While I don't think negatively of any of these people, at the same time, they are humans and they are not perfect. And when they do make mistakes, and sometimes unintentionally and then sometimes intentionally, you have to sort of be able to detach yourself, you know, emotionally from these people, because they are there to serve a role. Zelensky is the commander-in-chief, and then you have all of his aides and his cabinet that are there to help him as well, ward off the Russians, and also, you know, conduct basic administration operations inside of Ukraine. And in my mind, we have to vet, like the enforcer is saying, we have to vet these people the same way with scrutiny, because you don't want to let them have a free reign, because when people get a free reign, humans are humans, they tend to try to experiment and also test boundaries, and sometimes it might go a little too far. So it's always good to have a check and a balance, even in the public opinion sphere, you know, where it becomes unquestionable at this point.
I would have to agree, and that's something that I always think is important, because I see a lot of people, you know, saying different things about, we don't have the whole picture, you can't say everything. But that's the issue. We don't have the whole picture. Why isn't the whole picture coming out? I mean, if this guy has done something that truly deserves for him to be removed from the position, then that should be pretty easy to make public. I mean, it's been made public in the past. Like when Truman dismissed MacArthur, he got dismissed because he said he wanted to nuke the Yalu River, and Truman said, you're absolutely insane. I'm going to remove you from your position. And everyone knew about that in the public. I mean, that was something that was truly actually known. And that was a good reason for dismissal. But when you sit there and say, I'm dismissing someone, and when people go, why? They go, well, I'm not telling you the whole story. That's when questions start to get raised about, is there a legitimate reason for their dismissal, or are they just being dismissed for the hell of it? I'm pro-Ukrainian, just like I am a very proud patriot of my own nation. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm going to always blindly sit by and say that every decision that's made is a perfect decision that's great and amazing. Just because...
Yeah, exactly. We question, like, for example, not getting political here, but the American people in general will always question the president of the United States, no matter who they are. Like, that's something that we've always done as a country, is we always scrutinize the president. But for some reason, though, we're not applying that same standard to Ukraine. We can love Ukraine, we can hope for the best for Ukraine and know that they're going to be victorious, but at the same time, we can hold, you know, people responsible for actions. I'm not saying to remove people or, you know, try to get Zelensky out of there or something like that. Just simply hold them accountable. Because the West has a ton of power to exert over Ukraine. If something starts getting out of control, we can try to rein him back in, so that way we can be like, hey, you know, you need to calm down with your decisions, because we're not going to support you the same way we did in the past if you start acting a little bit uncouth. And then he'll back off, and that's better for the people of Ukraine, and it's also better for Western interests. But we can't just let everything go unchecked, or otherwise it gets out of hand, and then you end up with countries that kind of go a little bit awry. And then we start losing our influence over them as a Western ally.
And I would say that that is a good reason why. Nothing that a leader does should be taken without question, because you have to remember that there is a lot of power and authority that comes with the position of being a leader. There is a good room to always scrutinize every leader in the world and ask, is that really a good decision or is it not? And of course, as y'all know, because many of y'all have been here with this channel for a very long time, I have very rarely ever scrutinized a position or an action of the Ukrainian government. There has only been 2 times that I've actually done that. One was when Ukraine sued Eastern European nations because of their ban on Ukrainian grain imports, and the other time is right now. Those are the only 2 times over 2 years that I've ever actually had a problem with a decision that was made with by the Ukrainian government. I've always supported the Ukrainians and their decisions through and through every single time beyond that. But whenever situations like these come up, I can't, because of course, pro-Ukrainian, but unbiased analysis, I'm not going to sit back and say that every single decision is a perfect one. Because, there was actually a time in the Soviet Union, when Joseph Stalin was in charge, that people were kind of forced to say that every single decision that was made was a perfect decision. When they were mundane at the start of Joseph Stalin's reign for the first few years, and then when it immediately descended into absolute depravity and oppression of the populace of the Soviet Union to a form which had never even been seen up until that point, people still said this is in the best interests. We have to trust the leader no matter what. That's never smart to do, even if you are supportive of who they are and what they're doing. There is a point where you have to possibly disagree with a decision. And once again, a lot of people are saying we don't know the whole story. That's a little bit of the issue. We don't know the whole story. Why isn't the whole story coming out? There's no such thing as losing faith in the armed forces, because wouldn't it be better to tell the armed forces, hey, there's a reason why we're dismissing this commander. He's not doing a good job, or he's done something that's not in Ukraine's interest, so we're going to replace the commander because we care about y'all. That probably would be a good thing to do, but really, a lot of people have been having opinions on why Zelensky may even want to reshuffle the government, what the actual motivations for this may be. And Matthew, what do you think?
So this is the missing piece of information that people were saying we should wait for before jumping to a conclusion. And I would have to agree with you on that, but I will say that it has the appearance of not looking like it's a good situation, in my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously, to come to a concrete conclusion. But it looks like the majority of people believe that Zelensky wants to reshuffle the government because of maybe alleged corruption schemes or dishonesty. And we do know that corruption is still a thing inside of Ukraine. Zelensky's been working on trying to root that out for basically the entire time the war's been going on, and even before that. And it really has always been there, and it's sort of a thing that sort of keeps existing, but it's sort of getting dwindled down over time. So that's definitely a strong possibility. And then it's sort of mixed between political disagreements and also a lack of performance and results. And on the lack of performance front, I would say that there really hasn't been a bad enough lack of performance or a lack of results to warrant dismissing anybody, in my opinion. We'd be applying some very high standards if we're dismissing Zelensky over what he's done on the front, because he's done a good job overall. But there have been some shortcomings here and there, but we can't expect anyone to be perfect, like I've been saying for nights. And, not even our American generals are that perfect. So we can't apply an unrealistic standard to Zelensky, who's a very competent general, just because the results aren't the way we'd hope they are. I honestly, in my opinion, I would go with the political disagreement option. I think that's pretty much what's going on here. And, it's not unreasonable to think that's happening because Zelensky has been in the midst of this war for over, 2 years now or so, I think, Enforcer?
I think so, yeah.
So going on 2 years, he's been stressed out to the max. He's the one having to make the decisions here, even though he's having to defer to his experts like Zelensky. And that wears on you after a while. And finally, over time, your stress levels get so high that you can't even handle folks saying, I disagree. I think that's just human nature, but at the same time, someone has to rein him back in because we can't just start, dismissing, getting rid of people because of a disagreement. But Enforcer, what say you?
I see a lot of interesting comments. Folks agreeing with our stance, folks disagreeing with it, but still very interesting comments across the board. But to add on to something, because someone actually said something in the chat that I found very interesting. Let's see, Libertea said, why isn't the whole story out, in quotations? He said, well, in a country at war, you want to keep secrecy, especially for highly strategic decisions. Well, I gotta tell you something. I don't know where you're from, but looking at your profile picture, it looks like you may be from Canada, but Canada is very similar to the United States. Here in the United States of America, we hold ourselves up to incredibly high standards, to the point that information is released as soon as physically possible, most times. And if it's not, it's a public outrage, and the information is demanded to be released, and then it's released still fairly soon. During the entirety of World War II, the United States was openly public about the amount of casualties and deaths of soldiers that were occurring overseas at any given moment. almost just weeks after Pearl Harbor, there was already a casualty number out for how many U.S. service members had died at Pearl Harbor. Every single day that the United States was involved in World War II, local municipalities and the national government would put together daily casualty reports saying how many people had died, who they were, where they were from, notifying their next of kin immediately. And of course, giving about as best a picture that the public could possibly get, of course, while still making sure to ensure operational security as possible. Here in the United States, we do hold ourselves up to a very high standard. And I see some people saying that Ukraine is not America. But at the same time, when being an American, I don't sit there and always go, oh, it's a foreign country, I can't apply our standards to them. Especially when it's something as high level as this. Being an American, it is very hard to sit there and say, why, yes, we should always just go, you know what, it's not America, so if they do something that just seems absolutely weird, we ought to just be fine with it. It's a little odd. That's what I'm going to say, because, like I was saying just a moment ago, we are very open here in this country. We never hid casualty figures. We always were very open about casualty figures. When people died in Iraq and Afghanistan, usually the public heard about that just hours after it happened. Of course, we never had the names of the dead because those were usually released around 2 or 3 days later, but we would know when soldiers died in Iraq almost instantly. That's something that the United States holds itself to a high standard on, even on the low levels like that, because while deaths are, a human life is of course priceless, in the military sense of things, a corporal, like an E4, a specialist, or anyone lower than that, even a sergeant dying, it's not really that big of a deal. That's a pretty low-level deal as far as military information goes towards the public. But when massive decisions are made, like the dismissal of some kind of a commander, there are clearly a lot of questions surrounding it. Some people will know that whenever commanders were removed or dismissed, or retired even, here in the modern day in the United States, there are loads of questions circling around the public sphere about why were they dismissed, what happened, all that kind of stuff, and usually the answers are pretty forthcoming. And to look at Ukraine and watch Zaluzhny potentially getting fired, and then people ask, why is this the case? And then the Ukrainian government goes, that's secret. Why is it secret? It should not be secret. That's something entirely else, because if he's being outed for corruption, just say that. That's a good look. That shows that Zelensky and the Ukrainian government are continuing their crusade against corruption within Ukraine. Why not just say that? I mean, they've already said that in the past before when dealing with other officials. I believe that was actually the reason they gave for the dismissal of Oleksiy Reznikov, who was the Minister of Defense, the prior Minister of Defense, because he was actually allowing for price gouging to occur on Ukrainian military contracts. And he was dismissed for that reason, and that was made fairly public. So it's a little odd. It's really odd, actually, to not do that for Zaluzhny, because if there is a good articulate reason that he's being dismissed, it should be made public. But if anything, I have a feeling that it probably is corruption. If he's being removed for a good, legitimate reason, it probably is corruption, because I can't think of another one. But with that, I hope that does address that whole side of things fairly well, but we can see that the Russians are suffering with very bad cases of issues, and we can still see the holdovers like the Wagner Group still surviving but dying fairly quickly these days. But moving on from that and down into the town of Cherkasy, we got to see that while things are going on in the big picture that, of course, are raising questions here and there, we did get to see that apparently the Ukrainians are working pretty hard on making sure to help out their frontline forces, such as here, making metallic brackets to help reinforce dugouts. I'm going to have to mute this, but you can see them all working on the anvil and getting these brackets ready to go.
And also, they're having a good old time in there, too.
Oh, they're having a great time. It's like a blacksmith shop, pretty much.
Looks like it's getting pretty hot in there, though, I will say.
Oh, yeah, man. You know it's got to be hot. But then again, it is winter, so I guess it's kind of like equaling out. You know, hot and cold, hot and spicy, you know?
They really are using those, like, Acme Wile E. Coyote, like, animals, too. I've never seen one of those in real life before, I don't think.
And look, they gotten some tokens of appreciation from Ukrainian soldiers sending off battle flags.
Man, if they could take that anvil and drop it from the drone like the Coyote used to do, then drop it on the Russians' heads, that would be something else.
Dude, that would be, man, Baba Yaga could do it probably. Probably like drop a small 50-pound anvil, maybe. But moving on from that, speaking of dropping anvils, we got to see the Kraken unit absolutely dropping an anvil on everyone's head today with the absolute drip factor that they had. Check out these pictures that the Kraken unit made today. Dude. Someone's been playing Call of Duty. Someone has been playing Call of Duty a little bit to have that mask. But also, they put out some other pictures. I mean, pick goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. Impressive stuff. And I gotta say,
those Kraken guys, I'm telling you, they're just like kidded to the max. Like, it's obscene, like how nice their kit is.
Dude, they really do take drip to the next level as far as their equipment and kit goes. No one beats the Kraken. And really nice to see that they got some cool stuff out there that they're using on the battlefield, and hopefully giving them an upper hand advantage. Moving on from that into our next little bit of news, we got to see some Ukrainians warming up near a little campfire. We're going to be muting that, but we can just see them hanging out, you know, chilling, grilling. We see them just naturally doing their thing, just enjoying life like they should. And that's the end of the clip right there. Right when we got to see
loving it out there.
Yeah, and also huge shout out to the Ukrainian Mr. Beast right here at the end of the video, sitting there enjoying the campfire. But speaking of which, apparently some Russian soldiers were not enjoying a campfire today. They were enjoying apparently the bitter taste of defeat, as we got to see that another 6 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed.
Damn, they're doing good out here. I'm telling you what, February 4th is a good day.
February 4th, a mighty good day. And not only that, 810 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours, along with 13 armored personnel carriers, apparently 123,933 supply trucks, adding a whopping 100,000 to the list, and making sure to remind the Russians that they just aren't good enough. They are not that guy, pal. Not that guy. But of course, another 41 added today. This number is a typo, though. It's supposed to be 12,393, not 123,933. But moving on from that, we got to see the 2 main battle tanks were also destroyed. 31 artillery pieces were also knocked out as well, along with 2 drones, 1 cruise missile system, and the 6 special equipment vehicles. Overall, it has been a pretty big day. And I gotta say that this is a logistician's wet dream over here. 123,933 supply trucks destroyed. That is probably all of the 18-wheelers or semi-trucks in the entirety of the Russian Federation if all of those had been destroyed. But beyond that, a really nice thing to see that the Ukrainians are keeping up the losses quite nicely, and of course, keeping it up very well indeed. It's now time for us to move on towards those front lines, but I've noticed that there was a massive call to increase the fundraiser goal, and we are currently sitting at $3,600 raised on the fundraiser. We have about $1,500 to go to reach the second goal. Is it possible? Will the Lee Spring Army do it? Because I know that the Lee Spring Army has everything well in hand. The Lee Spring Army never misses a goal. And I know that tonight, the Lee Spring Army already surpassed the first goal, but are y'all going to surpass the second one? I'm very interested. Hopefully we'll see. And of course, we may even, because stick around if you want to be here for that, we may even call up a general order. But we'll see.
Oh?
We'll see. But we're going to be moving on up into the northeastern area in the meantime, towards the direction of Avdiivka, where we got to see a Ukrainian BTR-80 absolutely hitting the apex. Here it comes. Same song that's played forever. Oh my, many more, my, many more, my. And when you see them putting the bag up on the BTR-80, they're like, thanks, homie. And then they're like, put on the gas.
Man, you know that's got to be cold on top of that thing, like going fast, like with that snow out there.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's got to be freezing.
They're just freezing, man. They're freezing.
And with that,
can you turn on the heater? I'm a little cold.
And with that, that's the end of that little clip right there. Just wonderful to see. And also, I saw something interesting in the chat I'm going to have to go back and address. Someone said, suddenly all the Zelensky hate, that is falling right into Putin's arms. there's a difference in between hating someone and disagreeing with them. And you can disagree with someone and still not hate them and still respect them as a leader. I just want to make that very clear. Just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you now magically hate them. I know we live in the modern world where a simple disagreement now means you have a blood oath to kill someone, but I live in a fairly rational mindset where you can still respect someone and like them for who they are. And I have to say that Zelensky is still an amazing president of Ukraine, probably one of the best that has come along, and is doing an incredibly good job as the president of Ukraine. But at the same time, that does not mean that every single decision he makes, I must agree with, otherwise I hate him. That's almost straw manning, because that is not at all what I'm trying to get towards in what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that I disagree with this decision that he's made. I'm not saying I now hate him and want him dead, because that would be a completely different kind of a standpoint than what I'm really trying to get at. I just want to make that clear, because I don't want people taking something I said and then trying to twist it into I disagree with something Zelensky said to now I'm a pro-Russian and absolutely hate Volodymyr Zelensky and all of Ukraine, because that would be a pretty big jump from one thing to the next. But moving on from that, and down into the area of Sinkivka, we did get to see a Ukrainian soldier giving a walk-around on a Polish Razom and a CV-90.
Росомаха. Зараз трішечки вам візьму. Ось такий він має вигляд. Ось так ось. Так, щоб ви розуміли, пушка 30-го калібру, тобто вона більша навіть, ніж в Бредлі. А двигун тут стоїть від... Двигун тут стоїть від Скані. Вага цієї машинки 22 тонни. О, так він виглядає. Зараз попросюсь хлопців, можливо, покажу, як він виглядає всередині. Так, хлопці дозволили мені зняти зверху, тільки так, щоб я нічого лишнього не відзняв. Ось так він виглядає зверху. Ось це його пушка.
Look at him showing off this beautiful Razom with his 30mm main gun. Oh, beautiful. Perfection, even. The turret covered in traction pads to help you not bust your teeth out when you're trying to climb into the turret. Perfection. You don't see that on Soviet MBTs, or even APCs for that matter.
Так, друзяки. Ну ось я її.
Look at that driver's position. Beautiful, clean, immaculate. It's even got keys, like a car.
Тумблірочки. Навіть магнітола є, щоб ви розуміли. От, коли воно все зроблено для людини. Ось така от штука. Да, тут реально удобно. Реально удобно, класно. Сидушка така класна. Підвинув, одвинув. Ну це апарат. Я розумію. Нічого зайвого. Просто нічого зайвого. Показчики.
That's a nice cab. It's like a school bus.
Oh yeah, man, it is sick.
Чисте, все охайне, все ціленьке.
And also, speaking of sick, everyone better get ready because something's coming around the corner. And it pertains to the Lee Spring Army. We see him closing the hatch there.
Ось тут така ручка. Відкрили. Ось там ми з вами щойно були. І закрили. Все, піду хлопцям подякую. Ось така от річ.
Just beautiful. Here's the rear compartment of the Razom.
От тепер ми з вами всередині.
There's the turret basket right there.
Виглядає всередині.
A real basket case of a turret. Y'all see what I
I'm
did
telling
you.
Все на моніторах. Все на джойстиках. О, щоб ви розуміли, тут все на джойстиках. PlayStation.
That's got that Logitech HOTAS in there.
That's, yeah. Dude, I love the modern Polish Razom. It's so cool. There's a periscope right there, so that way the gunner or the commander can look out.
Трішки. На вулиці занадто світло, тому нічого не побачите, але я реально бачу все. І я знаходжусь нижче. Все на джойстиках. Просто управління на джойстиках. Монітори. Ще монітор. Оце машина. Воно, лента кулемета.
We see him showing the ammo belt into the main gun.
Радіостанції. І тут також удобно. Реально ти сидиш і тобі класно, тобі удобно. Ось така от штука. Так, друзяки, хлопцям подякую. І ми з вами побігли.
And there's the Rosmec on the road. Oh, look at it.
Хорош.
And here's the CV9040. He just moved straight onto the next vehicle like Doug DeMuro doing a Quirk and Features review. He's like, check this thing out.
Калібр пушки 40 мм. Ось така, дивіться, яка чітка машиночка.
Matthew?
Шведи ділять вещи.
Yes?
I want you to prepare the Lee Spring Army for a general order.
Oh.
Ось така тема. Так, зараз, друзяшки, секунду.
You see him climbing inside of the CV90? And right when this video clip ends, y'all, the Lee Spring Army's going over the top. So be ready. And the CV90 is as clean and nice as the Rosmac was. Beautiful system.
Ось така шведська.
That's the
Is that the
end.
end?
That's the end.
Order!
It is general order time. We have reached $3.6 thousand on the fundraiser. We've got to reach 5, and I'm going to start this thing off with a bang. Y'all have probably not seen something like this in a while, but boom, chugga, chugga, boom, chugga, chugga. It ought to be in the chat in a second, and boom, boom, baby. $300.
Strong. Let's go.
The general order is now at call. Everyone in the Lee Spring Army, if you have $5 to give it, you can give it. Put it into the fundraiser right now. We are going to send this thing over the top to $5,000. Also, really quickly, I have to give a massive shout out to Susan L., who just PayPal'd us that $300 because they were not able to donate directly to the fundraiser, and they asked me if they could have me throw that in that way. So that's where that $300 came from. A huge shout out to Susan L., absolute champion, and of course one of our members from the United Kingdom. And it's amazing to see that they want to support the fundraiser and help save Ukrainian lives. The fundraiser has already reached $4.1 thousand right now, and I bet money that we're going to see this thing reach 5K by the end of the general order. But moving on from that little bit of news up in the area of Tavolzhanka and down into our next clip, we got to see the 45th Artillery Brigade hitting the Russian forces and knocking them out. Here's the clip, and really quickly, let me get up here. And we're going to have to mute that because it's absolute trap. Though here comes the FPV drone of the 45th onto a BMP. And we can see the BMP is on fire.
It's burning quite well.
Oh, it's burning. Just like the general order is burning out both ends. We've gotten up to $4.2 thousand. We are
Let's go.
about, I think, 850 or less away from the fundraiser goal of $5,000. It is our second fundraiser goal of the night, and the Lee Spring Army has got to hit it. It looks like the general order is still going strong, and it's got to keep going strong. We've got to make it to $5,000. And we see the 45th hitting the Russians with their drones as the fundraiser reaches $4.3 thousand. And
dang,
holy
I
moly!
Just saw 3,000.
Oh my God, we just hit
Hal Rose. Let's
oh my God! Oh my God, dude! We just hit 7,000 $7,700 raised on the fundraiser from a Chad of a viewer, Hal Rose, an old guard of the Lee Spring Army, throwing in $3,333.
Damn, Hal Rose just threw in a chunk.
That chunk is so big that his single donation alone to the fundraiser surpassed the original fundraiser goal tonight by $333. That is crazy. And everyone's got to give a huge thanks to Hal Rose. We have had so many people who have been supporting this fundraiser tonight, but Hal Rose is the champion of champions on tonight's fundraiser. He has single-handedly accounted for nearly half of tonight's fundraiser amount at this point. Truly incredible and truly a legend of the Lee Spring Army. A huge thanks to Hal Rose for making that possible, and everyone else who heeded the call of the general order and brought forward the shot and shell that the Lee Spring Army is famous for on the internet. The Lee Spring Army has done a lot for Ukraine. We have raised nearly 1.4 or a little over $1.4 million over the entirety of our fundraisers, and the Lee Spring Army still continues to dominate over the rest, making sure to provide as much support from the nonprofits operating in Ukraine as possible. A huge shout out to every single one of y'all, and put a Lee Spring Army in the chat if you agree. Just smack down a little LSA as we move on into our next clip, where we got to see probably the most heroic rescue of the war. To give y'all a little bit of background going on to this clip, the Russians pushed forward today near to this mine complex near Avdiivka, and some Ukrainian paratroopers got stuck on the second floor of the building, with the Russian forces on the ground floor. The Ukrainian paratroopers had run out of ammo at this point in the battle, and were asking for some kind of support to come in to help suppress the Russians or wipe them out, so that way these Ukrainian paratroopers could retreat off of the field. What happened was truly unbelievable. The Ukrainians sent in an FPV drone that disabled or knocked out the Russian forces on the bottom floor, and the Ukrainian paratroopers hopped out of the window on the second floor to the ground and ran away in the chaos, and were able to make it to fight another day. Here comes the drone, hitting the Russians at the bottom of the building, right there, and here in a second the video will cut forward where you can see the Ukrainian paratroopers hopping out of the second floor window and making their way the hell out of there. Impressive. They got to live
that was
to
actually
fight.
quite graceful to get out of that second floor window, actually.
Yeah, man. I mean, they did pretty freaking good, and also amazing to see that that they did such a good job, of course, just surviving the whole ordeal, considering that they had literally run out of rifle ammo. But moving on from that into one of our last clips of the area, we've covered all of the clips of this area. It's time for us to move a little bit further on down and check out this Ukrainian column that was on the move. There goes the T-64BV. And here comes another one. Can y'all believe that we've raised $7.8 thousand tonight? I mean, like, honestly, I did not see that coming. That's hit me like nothing else. I was like, wow, nuts.
That is crazy. That's like that's actually more than double the original goal. Like, and it's even higher than the goal that you raised it to. Even.
Yeah, I mean, by thousands of dollars, because we raised it to 5,000. Now we're almost 3,000 above that. I mean, that is unbelievable. And Swindon Badger just threw in a 180-pound donation. That's quite heavy indeed, I must say. But nevertheless, unbelievable support tonight. I think that just got us up to $8,000. Oh my lord!
Damn.
This fundraiser
Man,
is
even
going
the Badgers are out tonight. I'm telling you what, everyone's out.
Man, this fundraiser do be wild, and I'll tell you what. But moving on from that little clip of the Ukrainian column on the move, and way further down the line, I'm going to take y'all to something that we can't even watch the entirety of because it is literally so long. This is a montage of a single day, literally a single day, and y'all can see that I watched about 26 minutes of this before I, was able to put it onto the stream. But this is 43 raw minutes of fierce fighting going on at Avdiivka in a single day. Just one single day. This footage was released very recently. And I'm going to be showing y'all at least I'm going to be showing y'all from here forward, from 2 minutes and 50 seconds forward. I'm not going to be showing the entire thing, however, because it is literally just way too long to show on stream. But if y'all want to see this whole video, you can go down to the link in the description below, click on it, and then go to the area around Avdiivka on the southern flank of Bakhmut. Click on this link and watch the entire video for yourself. It's also on the 3rd Brigade's YouTube channel, which has 925,000 subscribers. Good job on the 3rd Brigade. But nevertheless, here is the clip.
Бать, пацаны, нахуй. Я вас прошу, блядь, без 300 и 200.
Пидоры, сука, получайте нам! Пацаны, прикрийте, я перебіжу ближче.
Давай!
You see the firefight here in the tree line. And what kind of cameras are the 3rd Brigade using? This is like 4K Ultra HD footage from everyone involved.
IMAX cameras, man. They gotta capture this for the Vine.
Yeah, I mean, jeez.
Хорош! Хорош!
Прикривай, блядь! Прикривай, сука! Залупа, прикривайте ви чи ні, блядь? Тримай, раз!
See him handing a thermobaric grenade or smoke grenade, one or the other. They're very similar to each
Я
other.
закину, старий, ти не переживай, що я, блядь... Валерич, Валерич, а я, блядь, стою, блядь, ззаді, блядь, а? Сука, Валерич.
Well, you can hear and see the 3rd Brigade advancing, lobbing nades at the Russians as they're pretty much fighting point blank.
Підтягуємося, підтягуємося. Двоєчками, двоє, прикривай.
Man, what kind of a muzzle device is that on this AK? It's like almost like a cup grenade launcher. That's kind of cool.
Эдос, потягивай справа вперед, да подкусь, понял? Потягивай. Блядь, підер висовує каску перед тобою! Сука! Заєбаш його!
Dude, this guy tried to say something, and every single time he got interrupted by an explosion, so you try and wait for it to be over, then he try and say something again, and then he get interrupted by another explosion. Listen, Matthew, like for like 20 seconds, he was like, he just kept on doing it. Listen.
Блядь, підер висовує каску перед тобою! Сука! Заєбаш його!
He really was. He was getting exasperated toward the 3rd time.
Dude, he went, he was like, dang, man. He was like,
перед тобою! Він руку висунув! Руку! Дай бачу! Пацани, підтягуйте!
Трошки менше, треба нажимати, дуже близько до окопної лінії. Гранатами
See an explosion happening very close to the Ukrainian fighting line. We see him lobbing a nade to another Ukrainian, so you can get a little bit more range on it. Give him that good old throwing arm.
Правіше! По-сомалійськи хуярить! 2 метри, Він відкидує, пацани! Його треба завалити, нахуй! Прикривай, сука! Сюда! Правий фланг, нахуй! Отут підар сидить, сука. Я йому гранату уїбало. Уйобі ще вилазить не хоче. Вилазь, сука!
We're going to end the clip right here because, crazily enough, we've already watched 4 whole minutes of this 43-minute video. But it's giving us a really good look at what the 3rd Brigade is fighting like. And it's bizarre when you watch these battlefields unfolding in film, how they are occurring over a literal linear battlefield. It's occurring down a single tree line. So they have to advance directly onto the Russian forces. There are no flanking maneuvers. It is literally just a slugging fest down the tree line as they try and push the Russian forces back. But truly incredible film, and almost 30 more minutes of it in that clip. But moving on from that and into our next one, we also got to hear today from the Institute for the Study of War that Ukrainian forces are in fact moving forward, and we're able to gain some ground just to the east of Klishchiivka today, which is great news. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the 80th Brigade launching a drone behind the lines. It's one of the Leleka reconnaissance variants of drones, but we got to see a couple of pictures of them messing with the Leleka today and getting it ready to launch. Of course, a very common reconnaissance drone at this point in the war, but way back in time, this was actually a pretty rare drone to see on the front lines. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and a little bit further down and into the area of Marinka, because we got to see down in the direction of Marinka today that Russian positions were getting hit with clusters, and it was a cluster F down here. Oh man, I'm telling you. Ooh, we're going to be muting that. Man, I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is about tonight, but we've been getting so... Oh my lord! Well,
Damn!
It's, look at this. That's a light show. Good lord. That's a real cluster right there.
That's called explosive pepper.
That's it. Pull out the Hass and Pfeffer. We got the salt and pepper up in here. But beyond that, I got to tell you, I got to say this, Matthew. We've been getting some wild bots in the chat tonight. Bots be wildin' tonight.
Yeah, it's like the good old days. Like the bots are back out in force. I'm smacking them down left and right. You know, before I took the hiatus from the stream, we had maybe 2 or 3 bots a night. Like, it had gone down to practically nothing. But for some reason, ever since I've returned, it's been about 20 to 30 a night of Russian bots coming in here spewing the propaganda.
Yeah, and also for some reason, y'all, I gotta say this. This is a pet peeve of mine. Is because I have seen one channel regular get banned tonight, particularly because they got pissed off that we were thanking all of y'all for a moment about the fundraiser and talking about how incredible the Lee Spring Army's been tonight. Yeah, I gotta say this. It aggravates me to no end, especially when someone's been around for a while, when they get pissed off that we're thanking everyone else in the Lee Spring Army for making a fundraiser that's saving Ukrainian lives possible. I mean, you know, if your mind is that fragile that you cannot literally listen to us give 1 minute of thanks for nearly over $8,000 raised to help save the people we're talking about on the news, that's pretty wild to me. Pretty bizarre, I'm not going to lie. And I know that that person is still around, and I gotta say, like, very rarely do things truly piss me off, but that pisses me off to see people disrespect the entire community by trying to act like us thanking them is just stupid and an absolute waste of time. It's arrogance to an unbelievable degree, and narcissism to think that we shouldn't thank people for taking money out of their own pockets to give to people thousands of miles overseas to save their lives. Instead, we ought to make sure to give you a continuous news program just for you, because who cares about these people's lives and who cares about all of the efforts of the Lee Spring Army? Just rude beyond belief. But anyways, we got to see the 44th Brigade slamming down some Russian forces with some of their D-30 artillery pieces. We can see here a Russian BTR trying to escape the field.
He didn't make it.
And he did not. Matthew made a very good observation. And here's a BMD getting the D. I mean,
whoa.
But it did. I mean, it's gone. It's done for. You see what I mean?
He got it.
Oh, he got it.
Man, call these Ukrainians Gordon Ramsay. They've been seasoning everything up tonight. Pepper on everything. Can we add some pepper? Can we add some sassafras? Oh, damn, sassafras. You don't put sassafras on. Add some rosemary. Something. I don't know.
Where's the lamb sauce? It's pizza.
I just realized I have no knowledge of seasoning or anything when I just tried to do that joke. I was like, I can't really think of a single seasoning like rosemary or I don't even know. Hell,
man, in my world, it's salt, pepper, and Tabasco. Those are really like the only seasonings that exist in my world. And someone's probably like, Tabasco weak. Yeah, yeah, it's weak. What about it? Oh my lord, that one turned into a little fireball down there. Sweet. At even odd, the total is somewhere around 1.4 from what we know, but we still don't have an exact figure because due to some whole thing that happened back in the past, right around the start of law school, the literally down to the cent figure was lost. So I've been working off of a raw approximate from that point forward, just adding everything else onto it. So it's a little bit above or a little bit below 1.4. But with that, that's the end of that clip. Great to see the 44th doing its thing. And with that, we are now going to be moving on all the way down the lines to the area of Kupyansk. Because today we got to see that the Ukrainian, some Ukrainian recon forces were attacking Russian trenches here in this area. Here's the clip. Also, I like that CZ Bren. Very nice.
Пути назад нету, никто не умрет. А кто умрет, он не узнает нахуй. Пішли, Кукс? Идем. За мною. Дистанція 10 метрів. Давайте. Пішкуємося, пацани, пішли.
Interesting.
Пішкуємося, йдемо.
You can get a Bren, you can get one of these Brens right here in the video for approximately $1.8 thousand. Not that bad.
$1.8 thousand, damn.
Well, you know, actually, $1,999 exactly. But you know, considering it's kind of like a Scar Light, that isn't that bad because I think Scar Lights are like $3,500 if you can even find one right now.
I'll take a Daniel over that any day of the week. $2,000.
Man, I would take an FN. Oh, here goes the firefight. It's begun.
Ползком.
Oh, and the bullets are flying right overhead.
Що це було? Йдем. Що це було? Не знаю. Пошли.
Oops, sounds like someone got hit.
Що? Давай, Чепа, дай допомогу. Трох, ідіть забирайте його. Що там? Ребра дали.
And Chris, good question. We don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully soon.
У меня инженер ранен в ногу. Мы чуть-чуть продвигаемся, сейчас эту тулю подсунул.
We hear heavy fire flying right over the Ukrainian soldiers' heads.
Его понесло, у него брюшное ранение. Передайте нам медевак, пусть встречают в окопе. То идем, блядь, как шли. Идем, как шли, чё? Ну, то идем, блядь, что делать? А пацаны доползли туда? Ползем.
Now see the Ukrainian soldier getting up and running down the line, hopping over the other Ukrainian soldiers and getting in the ditch. We hear an FPV drone coming in. Apparently hitting the Russians, actually. May have been Ukrainian support.
Я кидаю гранату. 2 человека, двигайтесь сразу туда. У меня есть. Нихуя. Что? Пацаны, двигаемся, а то фаталити. Куда мы
See them continuing to move around in this ditch near the tree line. Ooh, a Russian grenade right there in front of him. And apparently the wind's strong in this area, heading towards the Russian position.
Гранату закидывай! И давите огнем! Давите постоянно огнем! Одиночкой! Граната! Граната!
Another grenade.
Там
Well,
пулемет!
there went an artillery shell screaming over.
Давай! Вас, сука, гонять надо, нахуй.
Тебя тебя гонять тоже.
Я могу всех погонять. И тебя тоже надо гонять, давай.
На дальний траншей, пиздец!
Ну, что делать? Давай тут.
Проходим, по пидору убегают!
Проходим!
We see our Ukrainian squad here continuing to try and push through what is going from a ditch to a small trench. And they're continuing to fight their way through it.
С меня штаны, сука, слетают. Так, Кук, я штаны поправлю по-быстрому.
Давай, я двигаюсь. Что это, будемо б нам стали, блядь?
Да, хай пехота. Надо продвинуться, продвиньтесь, протуль типов. Нет никого, покидай гранаты, я возьму БК, придем постреляемся нормально. Я хочу типа вынести. Там...
And that's the end of the clip, but getting us a really good look at the fighting that happened all the way over at Kupyansk on the very edge of the Dnipro Reservoir. But moving on from that news and down into the area of Kherson, we also got to hear today that at Kamyanka near Novokakhovka, another Kamyanka, a Mista S was destroyed today by Ukrainian counter-battery fire. I know the song. That one's been played for like forever, for 2 years now. But, you know, they're all the same. They're all the same. But we can see the Mista S down there in the trees. You know, when the trees start speaking Ukrainian, then you're really concerned. And we're going to wait for that artillery shell to hit. And bada boom, bada bing, jaga jaga, blit, suke. You know what I mean? Okay, and there we go. The Mista S is gone. Destroyed. Like it should be. Yeah, baby. Хуйло, конец теперь. But anyways, beautiful to see that they were able to knock one out. And moving on into our next clip, we also got to see a T-55 get blown up today near the area of Krenki. T-55s are actively being used as frontline main battle tanks near the Krenki area in southern Kherson, and this is one of those getting destroyed today. Look at that. It is literally like it's straight out of a museum with the giant white numbers on the side of the turret and everything. It is insane to think that they're using these things because they're almost 80 years old now. But they're still being used and they're getting wiped out.
I'm surprised the Russians can even keep those things maintained properly because that's kind of a feat in itself.
Yeah, it's crazy to think they're keeping an 80-year-old tank running almost. It's really like 70-something years old. But that's still pretty freaking old. You know, it's like, how old, like how old does a tank have to get in the Soviet Union for them not to have an unending amount of spare parts, apparently, to keep them running? That's an interesting question, and one we'll eventually find the answer to, because the war will uncover the truth. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the Russians were continuing to bomb Krenki, as Ukrainian forces are still inside of it and holding it quite strongly. There's Krenki. As you can see, the entire town has been leveled due to Russian shelling that has been endless, and they're about to continue to shell it here in this clip. And there's the incoming bombs right there. From what we understand, they were both Fab 500s. Actually, they were all Fab 500s. And we see them continuing to hit right on the very edge of the village. The clip ends there, but once again showing that apparently the Ukrainians are holding Krinky strong, and the Russians are trying everything they can to uproot them and move them out. But with that, it's time for us to get up to Kyiv and cover that speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 711 of the war. 711.
Speech.
Let's see here. I'm not going to lie, the green screen here, because, you know, once again, they need to go back to actually using real life offices and things like that, because the green screen ain't that good. But here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Дуже активна неділя сьогодні. Вранці роботине. Одна з найбільш жорстких частин фронту. Запорізький напрямок. Особисто подякував воїнам, нагородив безпосередньо на передовій 5 з кращих тих, хто відзначився в боях цими тижнями. Старших солдатів Ігоря Гончарука, Івана Тарана, Ярослава Поліщука, сержанта Михайла Блашківа і старшого лейтенанта Андрія Ольшанського. Андрія відзначено Хрестом бойових заслуг. Усі саме такі хлопці, чия хоробрість, витривалість зберігає наші позиції і нашу державу. Я дякую вам, воїни. Дуже дякую та усім вашим побратимам. У Запоріжжі провів безпекову нараду і не лише щодо питань області та міста. Були доповіді військових командувачів, зокрема по ситуації в Авдіївці. Звичайно, окрема розмова по Запоріжжю, увесь цей напрямок, фортифікація. Я вдячний усім, хто залучений до будівництва, захист від російських повітряних ударів, забезпечення соціального життя. Держава готова зробити більше для гарантування робочих місць та соціального спокою в області. Сьогодні ж представив нового очільника обласної військової адміністрації Івана Федорова. День повітряне командування «Схід», доповідь і детальна розмова щодо захисту неба над Дніпровщиною. Небезпека постійна, висока. Росія розглядає регіон як одну з основних мішеней для терористичних атак. Саме наші підприємства, наш економічний потенціал – цей регіон. Ми працюємо, щоб додати можливостей збивати ракети, збивати дрони. І наші воїни повітряних сил, мобільні вогневі групи, кожен, хто воює саме проти російського повітряного терору, заслуговують на нашу з вами вдячність і подальше посилення. У тому числі ми готуємо нові перемовини з партнерами щодо цього. Зараз Кривий Ріг, увесь район та інші громади області, нарада щодо енерго- та водозабезпечення міст і сіл Дніпровщини, зокрема і Кривого. Захист енергооб'єктів, посилення мобільних вогневих груп, ППО, РЕП, відновлення енергопотужності. Я дякую всім, хто цими днями оперативно відновив енергопостачання після нещодавніх ударів кожній ремонтній бригаді. Дякую і тим, хто працює зараз на будівництві нової інфраструктури постачання води. Це стратегічне завдання. Сотні тисяч людей залежать від цього. Нікополь, Марганець, Покров, частина Кривого Рогу та Криворізького району. Окрема доповідь щодо захисту від диверсантів та колаборантів. У правоохоронців є непогані результати. Максимальна повага, вдячність усім, хто воює заради держави, працює заради України, заради українців і усім, хто допомагає кожному волонтеру, кожній волонтерській спільноті, усім, хто в державі і разом з державою. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And it kind of brings us back onto something else. The United States government has actually made a statement about the potential reshuffling, really the imminent reshuffling of the Ukrainian government, according to the words of President Zelensky, saying that we might not get involved at all. And Matthew, I think you know a little bit more about this than I do.
So the U.S. says it will not get involved with Ukraine's government reshuffle when and if it actually happens. And looks like the majority of you said that the U.S. should not get involved, while only a very small percentage said that the U.S. should get involved in it. And in my opinion, I think the U.S. should exert some influence over Ukraine to make sure that nothing gets too out of hand, because you got to be careful with government reshuffles, like I said earlier, in the midst of a war. That creates instability, and also it could potentially lead some donors to maybe back off or get concerned a little bit about what Ukraine's goals actually are throughout this war. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's not necessarily the U.S.'s place to get involved in those kinds of decisions. We do have a limited scope, but at the same time, I have to say this, because I've seen a lot of people saying some interesting things, and this is the way I'm going to articulate it, just being frank with everyone. Watching the Ukrainian government remove Zaluzhny and possibly other top officials for really no good explained reason is going to feed into the hands of people who are anti-Ukrainian, and they're going to go, aha, see, because this is how people are going to spin the story in a negative way. I already know how it's going to happen, because we've been here for 2 years long enough to see how things like this do turn out. Although an instance like this has never happened before, we have a pretty good idea how it'll go. People are going to go, aha, look at Zelensky, see, he is so corrupt and terrible a person. He's firing all of these great leaders in Ukraine to go put his friends in these high up positions. Therefore, we ought to not support Ukraine at all, because he's just trying to get everyone in as possible that's his friend, so that way they can all, get involved in whatever corruption there is. People are going to spin it like that, whether you want them to or not. And if you think that sounds bad, then that's what people are going to start working off of. That's why it's important for the Ukrainian government to be transparent. Hell, I'm not talking something that I don't preach. I try and be as transparent with this channel as possible, even getting y'all a lot more detail into Matthew and my personal life than really anyone should ever be told, because I believe that there should be a lot of transparency about what people are doing, especially in positions where a large amount of people are putting trust into them and their decision making. You shouldn't just go, I removed him because I said so. That's like a cop saying, I'm going to search your car because I said so. You sit there and say, of course, we can't search your car without your permission. Do we have your permission to search your car? And if someone says no, you go, okay. When you dismiss someone from a top position in the government, you don't just go, I removed them because I said so. You say, I removed them for these reasons. And I feel like they're pretty good reasons, and we're going to be getting a replacement. That's what I honestly think should be the case. But at the same time, the U.S. should not get involved in that decision-making process. But at the same time, while we shouldn't get involved, keep in mind, whatever decision is made, this is going to start changing greatly a lot of the mindsets here in the United States, or at least furthering the bad voices here in the United States that do not want support for Ukraine. That's my honest opinion. And Matthew, what do you think?
I think you covered it pretty damn good, if I do say so myself.
I would have to say so myself. Don't you think, Matthew? I did really. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever. But anyways, I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion, because that's something that I think is pretty good to do. And of course, people are going to say, "Well, it's a war." Yeah, well, but the thing is that on a governmental level, a war is a war, and operational security is important. But when you remove someone, that's kind of something that you're not really hiding. That's something pretty public. And considering that the fact that he's being removed is almost being like touted like it's the upcoming Super Bowl, I feel like we kind of are, at least deserve an answer as to why that's happening. And some people are going to be like, well, the United States doesn't deserve an answer because we're not Ukraine. Yeah, but we've given them tens of billions of dollars, in all honesty. We paid them enough that they ought to be able to give us a straightforward answer as to why that's happening. Because we don't give out money as charity completely. You got to weigh that into consideration, especially when we want an answer like, why are you firing the guy? Because if he's getting fired for no good reason, that's going to be a little odd, and probably something that will, rightfully so, probably bring up a good bit of concern as to what Ukraine or the Ukrainian government is really doing at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I see, a lot of people saying, new guy, new ideas. But that's not how wars work. I mean, it rarely ever works like that. And I've given as much historical precedent as I can. If that is the reasoning that is being given, that is a bad reason. There's no such thing as that. You're going to take this guy, and I've explained this a million times on the Russian perspective. You're going to take this guy who's been there for 2 years. He knows the Ukrainian army's strengths and weaknesses in and out, backwards and forwards. He knows everything at this point because he's been doing this, living, breathing, eating, and sleeping this 7 days a week for nearly 2 years now. And you're going to remove this guy with an unlimited and boundless amount of experience and an amazing track record and rap sheet with only one blemish on it from the Southern Offensive. And you're going to remove him for someone who may not have that much experience at all, may not be as competent a commander as him, and certainly will be having to try and learn as he goes, which will end up creating mistakes and will end up costing lives. That's the reality of replacing a commander like that. Replacing a commander is a last resort decision. The Russians have done it nearly 7 to 8 times during the war, and each time they do it, there is a marked increase in the stupidity and casualties of the Russian armed forces in the field because this brand new commander comes in, and without understanding really the abilities or limitations of the Russian army, he has to go out and pretty much learn them on his own through trial and error, and of course costing a lot of resources and lives doing that. So that's, something, in my opinion, that I'd have to say. And also someone said, well, just because that doesn't mean he's not a McClellan. When did McClellan even win? Like, everyone keeps on referencing McClellan. When did McClellan even win anything? McClellan lost everything. Zaluzhny has won everything except for one offensive. It's not like Zaluzhny is just this brand new commander appointed last month that we know nothing about. He has been the chief of the armed forces for 2 straight years, and to act like we can't look back at a 2-year straight track record and go that it was really good, and just act like we have these questions, like we're suspicioning him like he's a potential criminal. Like, I don't know, is he good? Is he not? We don't really know. Like, we know he's good. I've literally sat here for 2 years and watched this guy do his thing as chief of the armed forces. He is a good commander. I mean, my job has been to watch him do stuff. Watch the whole Ukrainian army do stuff. He does a damn good job. It just does not make any sense to remove him. It's not like that's a question. That's a fact. He has a great track record and a good rap sheet. So that's what I gotta say. I know that a lot of people are, going to say, well, we don't really know if he's a good commander or not. How would you not? I mean, this guy's literally been the chief of the armed forces the whole war. It's been 2 years now. The United States was in World War II for 4 years. That means he's been the chief of the armed forces of Ukraine for half of an entire world war in length. How could we not know he's not a good commander? He's a very good commander. And it's ridiculous to start questioning that and act like he isn't, because now his job is on the line and Zelensky's talking about having him dismissed. So now we're going to all pretend like he never had a good track record. That's silly to me. That's like trying to rewrite history. The guy has been great. I can't stress this enough. He was the he was the chief of the armed forces that defended the city of Kyiv. If the Battle of Kyiv had been lost, there wouldn't even be a war for us to talk about dismissing him over today. Think about that. And then say, oh, I don't know if he's a really good commander. The only reason Zelensky's able to dismiss him 2 years later is because he defended Kyiv, where the capital would still stand and the nation would still exist 2 years down the road. I don't mean to get very passionate about this and sound excitable or anything, but it's just absolutely crazy for me to see people do all of these gymnastics and try and figure out a way to justify it and even start to take strikes at Zaluzhny's rap sheet and track record. I mean, he's done amazing. And I can't say that enough because I've been doing this for 2 years and have watched everything he's done. I could go over every minutia if we needed to, but I feel like I've kind of gotten my point out right there. Not trying to force y'all into my opinion, but I'm very strong and very passionate about my belief that Zaluzhny is a competent and incredible commander. But with that, I do think, Matthew, that we have something else that we have to get to. We have to get to everybody tonight who has made $8.3 thousand for Razom For Ukraine possible. So, Matthew, who do we have to thank for that?
So we've got a lot of people to thank for that. And also, since I've gotten my fingers away from the keyboard, I'm going to go ahead and call off Butchie777, who put in a 50-pound donation to the fundraiser. Very generous, Butchie, and thank you very much. That's quite heavy. That's weighing the fundraiser down quite well. And thank you very much. I've run that joke into the ground, I'm telling you. But anyways, moving on to our long list of top donors of the night. Up first, we have a very generous $3,333 donation from Hal Rose, the largest one of the night, and he basically took it and doubled it. He gave it to the next person and doubled it, and I'll tell you what, how that is very generous of you, and it should go with a lot of things. So we do appreciate it very much, and also that generosity to the fundraiser. And we have a 500 from Ed Olson, as well as a 500 from Mark the Kinetic Possum, which are the second and third largest donations of the night. And big thanks to Mark and Ed for that. Also, we have a 300 from Susan L, which came in on PayPal, by the way, which was put in by the Enforcer. And then we have a 200 from Darren Maynard, as well as a 180 from Swindon Badger. And then we have a 100 from some guy called the Enforcer, along with Hal Rose, Gene Kustra, Say What, DCC Prime 1, Darren Maynard yet again. Then we have a 100 from Eric Hutchins, Ted Marshall, and then a 70 from Plant Lady. And then we have a ton of $50 donations. The first is from Charles Hazlitt. Then we have one from Paramecium13, Jay Nozovich, Bex Chitwood. Then we have one from Dadgood, Mike Smith, Skip Tracer 007, Cliff H, Fred Von Hess, Axel K, Jimmy Hintz. Then we have one from Steve Watkins at work, and yes, he's still at work. And we have a 50 from Don Edwards, a 50 again from Darren Maynard. That's like the third or fourth donation from Darren tonight. Big thanks for that. And then we have a 50 from ASV as well as M288. And a huge shout out to all the top donors that we just listed off, as well as everyone else that we weren't able to call off because there were simply so many that came in tonight. Huge thanks to you all, because we're now up to $8,359. Absolutely tremendous. And honestly, I didn't think we were going to get that high tonight. That's like beyond my wildest dreams tonight. So huge thanks to all of you for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge thanks to everyone again, because that is actually the largest fundraiser that we've had for nearly 2.5 months, I believe. That is unbelievable and incredible. And I got to thank all of y'all for making this fundraiser a reality. That's pretty much a dream at this point, to have a fundraiser that is that large, helping to save so many lives. And we made it possible again tonight. So thank y'all for that, because that is truly incredible. And with that, we're actually going to be moving on into talking to all of y'all for a little bit in the live chat. But before we do, I have to get to something real quick. Someone said, and I don't mean to address this over and over again tonight, but someone in the chat said, and I'm going to name them out so that way they know I'm talking to them. NT Liveman said, "It's easy to talk when you don't know all the facts." I know, right? What facts do I know? I've only been doing this for 2 years of my life. I work 60 hours a week doing this 6 days a week, analyzing the entire war, trying to figure it out, usually being ahead of the curve enough that we've been able to get a mention here and there, like in a book from General Petraeus, and maybe a top 10 on the Kyiv Post for YouTube channels about the war, and also raise $1.4 million for Ukraine and predict things before they were going to happen, like the providing of Abrams to Ukraine, and also certain kinds of movements and offensives by the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russians, and being able to, figure out all kinds of stuff. I absolutely have no idea. I absolutely know none of the facts at all. That'd be ridiculous, because with just a small record like that, of just doing this for such a little amount of time and being recognized for so little of what we've done, it would be ridiculous for me to actually know enough facts to say that Zaluzhny is a good commander. As a matter of fact, NT Lineman, I think he sucks. I would have to agree with everyone else out there. Who am I to say that the guy is a good commander and really saved Ukraine at the beginning of the war and brought forward the only successful counteroffensives that they've had in their history? Who am I to say that? It would be ridiculous for me to talk from a position of knowledge and expertise, considering that this has been my whole life. That would be insane. I'm sure you, probably, working as, whatever out there, and just kind of looking at this as a hobby, I'm sure you know much more than me and are able to tell me with much more certainty that a decision like that is a sound and solid one, that I would have no understanding of whatsoever. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a douche and like pull rank and talk about everything that this channel's done, but that is so silly to say that I wouldn't know everything, considering that it is my job to try and know as much as I can, and knowing what we know, it's a bad decision. So with that, hope that does address that well. Just wanted to put that out there, but with that, I think we got more questions. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so y'all will remember that if y'all were here last night, we had a bit of a wonky internet issue right literally at the last 10 minutes of the stream, and we weren't able to finish reading off all of our super chats. So we do have about 7 or so from last night, which we'll call off right now, and then we'll jump into our live chats of the night. And our first one was a $5 super chat from Juan Pablo 0043. 0043. That didn't register in my head for some reason, but Juan says, which one will fall first, Xi Jinping or Putin?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably Putin, because pressures of war usually lead to a quicker collapse, but the issues inside of China are very big right now. I mean, they have some very big issues going on in China, but China has a really good way of suppressing what's going on. So I would say it's probably Putin first, but right now, with the way the Chinese economy is going, Xi probably isn't that far behind. But this isn't the first time that China's gone through tough times. I mean, they did go through the Great Leap Forward, which ended up killing 40 million Chinese people over 2 years. So it's not like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to China, but you know, it is starting to put them a bit on the watch list, and it's not a teaso that they're getting. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for the support. Also, by the way, just to clarify this one other time, we are addressing super chats from last night that we weren't able to cover last night because the internet went out. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, for some reason, my spreadsheet had a problem a second ago, so let's see if we can try to get it back into organization. Son over here frantically trying to get it back to shape, and now it looks like it is maybe cooperating. So our next one from last night was from Shannon Newman, who puts in a 5 and says, "Be great for no reason."
And thank you for the support, and we will try and be great for no reason. I think we're all right. It's all right. But I still thank you so much for the kind words and the compliment, and thank you for helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Carl, who says, "Have either of you tried a 1903 hammerless? A 32 is one of my favorites for having fun, and great show tonight."
Oh
last
my
night.
goodness. Can you believe that, man? Can you believe that they said that? 1 second. 1903 pocket hammer.
Should I be shocked?
Yes, you should, Matthew, because remember that is one of the pistols that I actually have is a 1903 pocket pistol. Remember that, Matthew? Remember that?
Oh, you do? I actually don't know the names of them. You just like hand them to me. I look at them. I'm like, oh wow, look at that. I'm like, that's cool, but I don't remember the name of it.
So let me see if I can get a good picture of one here. There's so many pictures of them, but not one I'm happy with right now. So we will go with... that one's not the right one. Excuse me.
Whoa.
Whoa, golly. But here we go. This is it. So this is the 1903 pocket pistol in 32 ACP.
Oh.
You know which one it is.
Yeah, that thing.
And look, it even has the little historical paperwork thing behind this one too from the Colt Archives. But beyond that, these little pistols here are super cool. I actually do have one of these, and they are a charm. 32 ACP is a wonderful caliber. I do not care if people say 380 is better. 32 is the bomb to me. I absolutely love 32 ACP, and with the weight of the 1903 pocket pistol, the recoil is literally non-existent. It is a recoilless pistol for the most part, and it has 2 safeties. It has your toggle safety, which you can see, let's see, in this picture, right there. It has a actual like lever safety, toggle safety, whatever you want to call it. And it also has a palm grip safety. So for a concealed carry pistol, because this thing is actually quite small in real life, it's tiny. I mean, compared to the 1911, I would say it's half the size of a 1911 in almost every dimension. It still has 2 built-in safeties, which is something that you really don't get a lot out of even modern concealed carry pistol designs. So it's intrinsically safe. It's a very smooth shooting pistol. It's pretty accurate too. The caliber is really nice, and overall, I like it. I think it's great. And of course, there is the 1908, because some of y'all, heard me say I don't really like 308, but not 308, 380, because if a pistol wasn't 308, good God, there goes your wrist. But this is the 1908. If you notice, it literally has like practically no real change in the design. It's just that in 1908, John Browning, who was the designer of this pistol, went back and upped the caliber to 380. So you can either get it in 32 ACP or 380, depending on your preference. I still like 32 ACP better, but 380 is an option out there. And it's not that bad of a round either. But still, thank you so much for the support and asking about that. I absolutely love the 1903 pocket hammerless pistol, and I also love 32 ACP. Really, any pistol that shoots 32 ACP, I love it, except for the Walther PP, he said it, and the Walther PPK, because those are kind of, they're kind of garbo, I'm not gonna lie. Like, they jam a good bit, and that isn't that hot. But these are hot. And also, something else that y'all might be like, hey, that kind of looks similar to something else. it looks really similar to this, doesn't it? The Tokarev. And believe it or not,
it doesn't look close to me. It looks totally different. This thing looks jank, and the other one looks, pretty good.
The other one looks classy. This one does look jank. But believe it or not, the Tokarev is actually like a Soviet copy in a way of the 1903 in some aspects, which is kind of a little wild, but this thing is far uglier. I just have to say that. Like Matthew said, this thing looks like garbage. It really does. And the 1903 is a smooth, beautiful, classic piece. It's just glorious looking. And I honestly have to say that, really, to me, they're really cool. Also, to give you a little bit of history behind these, not to talk about them too long, but you'll notice on this one that it says U.S. property. This is really cool as a fun fact. The Colt 1903 pocket pistol was actually the service pistol of the OSS, which is the predecessor to the U.S. CIA. And so the CIA in World War II, if you want to call it that, used this 1903 as their pocket pistol, or their service pistol more so. This was also used by police in several different parts of the United States, particularly the Northwest and the New England area. This was a pretty common service pistol for some police departments. It also was a pistol carried by a lot of aviators of the Army Air Corps during World War II, and even before that. And all the way up until pretty recently, some officers in the U.S. military have actually had this as their kind of like a ceremonial pistol, if you want to call it that, because I have seen on some forums people mentioning that at promotion ceremonies, some of the officers present, actually back in the 80s and the 90s, had these in ceremonial holsters, which is still really cool. I really love this pistol. I can't say it enough. And this was also John Browning's journey towards making the 1911. It was one of the pistols that he worked on that kind of evolved into the 1911, which is probably his most famous creation out of the pistol world. But with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well, because the answer to that is yes, I have seen one, I own one, and I love them. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to CK Bowl, who says, take a live chat question. And thank you very much, CK. And also, our live chat question is actually going to go to JD Macko 23, who sent me a new and upgraded version of that marmot. So check your Discord DMs and let's see it.
Let's take a look. Oh, hello there. Would you like a plum? Oh, I like it.
There. I can't see him. He's nowhere. I can't see him.
That's it. Sadly, I don't think you will be able to ever see it. But
oh, damn.
Hey.
Did he have some rock?
Does
he have any rock on him today?
Oh, dude, this thing doesn't do rock, Matthew. This thing does the finest of blow. it's
the finest blow.
It's a refined gentleman, Matthew. This thing doesn't do rock. It does fine Peruvian blow. But nevertheless, it is marmot time. And thank you so much, JD Macko, for sending in that refined and classy marmot. And thank you, CK Bold, for sponsoring that classy marmot. It was marmot time for a short moment here on the channel. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Ranked Scrub, who puts in a 5 and says, we need to install a no-fly zone, and how can we go about realizing this outcome?
We can't, as NATO, install a no-fly zone over Ukraine without legitimately getting into the war. The best way we could try and make a no-fly zone over Ukraine is to just bolster their air defenses to an insane amount, and they'll be able to shoot down anything that enters Ukraine. That's really the only way that we can help Ukraine make a no-fly zone without getting directly involved in the war ourselves and then creating World War III. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, we're going to have to give dual credit. We're going to give credit to JD Macko 23 for the marmot with the spectacle there, and also to Fuyuma as well, because I don't know which one made it. They both sent it to me. I see Fuyuma saying that he made it, and I also see JD Macko sending it to me, so I'm not sure exactly who made it at this point, but they'll both get some credit. Maybe one was a courier and one was the creator. I'm not sure, but thank you to you both. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 2 and says, thanks for the hard work that you two put into the stream.
And thank you so much, Wyatt, for enjoying the hard work. It means a great deal. And thank you once again for always being here with us and always enjoying the work, because I do my best to try and get you all the news as best as possible. And while being pro-Ukrainian, give you all as unbiased of a report as possible. And I got to be honest, Wyatt, I think I'm going to have to start re-emphasizing that, because lately it seems that people have forgotten that I try and be a unbiased analyst of the actual war while being pro-Ukrainian. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating that about the channel. I know you've been around so long, Wyatt, that you certainly know that. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. Also, really quickly, Hoodoo, Texas, there is no way. Hang on, let me go. 1905. Oh, hang on. I gotta go see if this is the right one that I'm thinking. Oh my lord, you own one? Oh, that is so cool. So, also meant to share this with you. Before Colt, well, actually John Browning, made the 1911, he had several other pistols that came along the way, and one of them was the 1905 in 45, but this is what it looked like.
Oh.
Bro, you whipping out the shtick.
Yeah. Also, you know, back in the day when Colt was first getting its start, they weren't the only company out there making pistols like that, because they had a competitor that was called Bolt.
Oh my God.
And Bolt. I can't keep going with that. Never
Dude,
mind.
I was sitting there. I was like, really? I was like, I never heard of a Colt competitor back in like 1837. I was like, what? Also,
I was going to go in hard on the dad joke, but I abandoned ship midway through. Forget it.
Also, check this out, man. This is actually a little chart right here on the right side of the screen showing the evolution from the 1900, which was really the first of the pistol designs leading to the 1911, all the way up to the 1911 itself, and then the 1911A1 in 1924. So kind of showing you like the evolution of the pistols as they went.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. Because John Browning didn't make the 1911 overnight. It actually took 11 years for him to finally get to that design, which is wild to think about. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. I can't believe you have one of those, Hoodoo, because from what I remember, I think on Gunbroker right now, those things are going for like 10 grand a piece. So if you have one of those, you really have a very expensive pistol in your hands. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Warren Zasquatch, who put in 2, along with LSA Sergeant Figment, and they said hit the like button, and that's an order.
And y'all hit that like button, hit it. Hit it, dagnabbit. It really makes us happy. It makes us really happy. And thank y'all once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hoagie 1080, who puts in a 2 and says $1. Eat your plum.
Would you like one? Yes, I would like
some rock.
That's it. Would you like some freaking rock? That's it. I hope that the microphone picked that up, but still, thank you so much for the support and helping us to get a plum. The Plum Fund is legit. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Philip Fixes LSA, who says maybe bring back the set for Sundays, ? And Slava LSA.
That's an idea. But what I'm thinking is that we're probably going to bring back the gun reviews, because we only did one. We actually filmed 2 simultaneously, but only one of them came out. The second one might come out, and then we're going to really rework how the gun review video actually was filmed and, you know, how it unfolded on like screen. And we're going to come out with probably more of them in the future, because I would like to do gun reviews. I think they're really cool, and I think it shares a lot about what kind of weapons of war are used out there in the world. And with that, I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we're fresh out of last night's super chats that we were unable to get to because of internet problems. So we're moving into tonight's live chat questions and also the Morse code of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and also David Millsaps. They said the LSA signal corps decodes to Morse for today. Russia quivers in fear, seeing Abrams come to the front line. Long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for that. That is truly incredible, absolutely amazing. And thank you once again for getting that message right. The Russians do quiver in fear when they see an Abrams, and no matter how much their bots want to pose over the internet, they know that their T-90M got bullied by a Bradley, so literally anything can be a victim of an American tank. Call American tanks R. Kelly because, oh buddy, you're in trouble. But with that, I hope that does address that Morse code message well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one, which is actually our first live chat question of the night, goes to Duncan VR, who says, how long would the British Army last in a direct conflict with Russia?
If it was a standalone of the British Army, probably not that long in reality. It's not that the British Army is under-equipped or anything. They're actually well-equipped, but the British Army is so small. The British Army only has around 65 to 70,000 active service members at the moment, and only enough equipment to support and reinforce that 65 to 70,000 man-strong army. To give you all a perspective of how small that military is, the last time the British ever got down to an army that size was at I believe the 1720s or the 1730s, if I remember correctly. So it has become minutely small. Back in the Cold War, though, the British would have done wildly well back in the 90s and the 80s, because the British Army was hundreds of thousands strong. They were huge. I mean, I think they were the second largest military in the Western world behind the United States of America, and they were kitted to the teeth as well. They had very good tanks, very good equipment overall, really a good armed force. But over the past 30 years, the British have decided to massively cut the budget of the British Armed Forces and also their size as cost-cutting measures, so that way they can spend the funding on other things. And it's not to say that what they've spent their funding on has been bad. I mean, they've actually spent the funding not that badly. Not trying to get into the political side of British government funding and stuff, because that is a political topic. They did go and spend the money on other things, but the military has now suffered because of that. And also, another thing that has suffered because of that is that due to the pretty much non-existent funding that the British military has gotten, and it's also minute size, a lot of the defense industries within the United Kingdom have started to fizzle out and nearly die. Like a lot of the shipyards that have existed throughout British history, especially the 20th century, producing Britain's most advanced warships, have almost all gone defunct or bankrupt because they have no business at all. In fact, building the HMS Queen Elizabeth and the HMS Prince of Wales was a really big thing, and even at that, both of them are plagued with issues, sadly, which I hate to hear that because I really love the design of the aircraft carriers. They're beautiful looking, but they're both riddled with issues because the shipbuilder was of subpar quality, because the company was almost going under when it got those contracts, and so its workers were not of a good skilled quality, and so the actual quality of the ship suffered because of that. That was clearly noticeable when the Prince of Wales, I believe it was supposed to be going underway to be a part of one of the largest naval war games that NATO has had ever since the end of the Cold War, and it ended up having to turn around and return to port due to a propeller shaft failure, which is a pretty major mechanical failure. So I hate to say that because I absolutely, I gotta say this, y'all, just, not trying to, because some British folks here might be taking this as I'm crapping on the British. I absolutely love Britain. It's the only country that I've actually traveled to outside of the United States, and it was beautiful, and the people were incredible. Their armed forces are amazing and well-trained, because we actually got to meet them while we were over there. Somehow, some way, we actually ended up getting to talk to some of them. Amazing nation with an amazing people and an amazing military, but sadly, it is underfunded and quite small at this point, and I would love to see the British start to put a lot more attention into their armed forces and grow it back into that Cold War standard that actually made the Soviet Union quite fearful to face the British down on the field. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next. Also, thank you, Edward Olvera. It was the Queen Elizabeth, not the Prince of Wales. The Prince of Wales is the sister ship that was built after the Queen Elizabeth. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to a bike and its boy, who says, I asked a live chat yesterday about Ramzan Kadyrov. Any news on him? And we hadn't heard from him in a while.
He's still suffering from diabetes, and he's hanging out in the presidential palace in Grozny. He hasn't done anything.
Diabetes.
Yeah, he's got that, oh, Don, I need another sandwich, Don. He's got that going on, not a lot more. Also, dude, downtown Grozny looks like garbage, man. Like, what's up with these giant, empty spaces here that there's nothing in? Like this. What the hell is this?
That's where something was going to go until he bought 5G wagons.
Apparently. Like, what is this? Like, they just built stuff. And then they built this giant map of Grozny? What the hell?
Is that a map?
Yeah, look at this. Like, look at this, like, white outline right here in this massive, like, square. And I'm going to zoom out. And this red area in the middle is the city of Grozny. And the white outline is Chechnya itself. So let me zoom out so you can see the borders. Look, literally an outline of Chechnya. They just used an entire city block, or like two of them, to just make this cheap, crappy map of Chechnya on it. Like, lame. You could have used that land for something a lot better, like maybe, I don't know, a grass park that actually would have been nice to be in. So you got this hot concrete hellscape in the middle of town that gives you this useless map. That's stupid. Like, man, Grozny is really stupid. Like, let's drop down in Street View, see what this place looks like. Oh, it is stupid. This looks like crap, man. This is terrible. This is downtown. This is the nicest part of downtown, and it looks bad. Like, looks like downtown Birmingham in some places.
That's pretty ugly.
Yeah, pretty damn ugly, I'd say. But anyways, hope that lets you know what Kadirov's doing. He's just living in that ugly-looking city. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to White Wolf, who says, why do tanks travel with their gun facing the rear?
It's for ease of driving. When the turrets face forward, and I'll pull up a picture. Let's see here. Let me go pull up a picture of a Leopard 2A6. And hopefully I can get a good picture of this. Hopefully I can get a good picture of this tank right here. So when the tank's turret is facing forwards, the gun is actually extending way past the front of the tank. And it makes it really difficult and a lot more involved to drive this tank with the turret facing forward for everyone involved. The commander, the gunner, and also the driver. The loader, he's just chilling, you know, but everyone else is having a really tough time. So to make it easier for the tank to move around, what you do is you spin the turret a full 180 and just point the turret backwards, because then, instead of the gun sticking over the front of the tank, the gun is pretty much sitting right over the engine bay. The very back of the turret is sitting right at the very front of the glacis, and so it makes it a lot easier for the driver to operate. And also, the gunner doesn't have to do anything. Because if the turret's facing forward, the gunner kind of has to work with the driver in where he's going and make sure that the gun barrel doesn't run into anything along the way. And that's very easy to happen, especially in an urban area or in a forest. So the best thing to do is just spin the turret around so that way the gun isn't really sticking over any part of the tank, and the driver can drive the thing like a car, pretty much, instead of having to worry about this massive gun sticking over the front of the thing and possibly getting hit by a tree or a wall and throwing off the alignment of the gun, or maybe even damaging the gun to the point the tank's completely unusable and has to be sent back somewhere to repair. That's the reason why they spin the turret backwards. And it's also funny to me, because this is something of normal practice, really, for every tank in the world. Even Russian tanks or Soviet tanks do this. And then when we saw Leopard 2s at the beginning of the war finally getting towards the front lines, I was like, oh, look, these are just miles away from the front. And people were like, no, you're not, because you're in transit mode with the turret turnaround. It's like, you're always in transit mode unless you're like less than a mile away from the front, because it would be really difficult to drive them around with the turret facing forward. But that's why, just to give you an answer, not to be salty or anything, but that's the answer. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Boss, who says, have you guys heard anything about Gerasimov? Is he dead or alive? And he hasn't been seen for 33 days.
So Gerasimov update, he's still missing. We have no idea where he is. And that's all we know. He's still Schrodinger's Gerasimov. Is he alive? Is he dead? We have no idea. But with that, I hope that addresses that well, or at least gives a lack of an answer, because we don't have a good one at this point. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Barry Woodward, who says, with the losses Russia has had in Ukraine, why do they think they could be successful in a Western front, the Baltics?
I don't think they really do believe that they could be successful, but I think they're still willing to threaten it and try, because they're Russians and, you know, just naturally stupid for that reason. But I don't know why they would even suggest that, because they have been hardly fighting Ukraine and hardly even getting by just losing. So it would be pretty crazy to go up against the actual alliance that has tens of trillions of dollars in a combined GDP and then act like you could win against that, just on the economic side. Not only that, on the military side, because, you know, while Britain doesn't have a big military, you take everything in NATO combined and you throw it at the Russians, they are going to be slamming the Russians dead by next week without the United States being there. And so it's really crazy for them to say stuff like that. I honestly don't think they believe it. I think they just say that for propaganda reasons for the Russians back home. So that way they think that Russia is great and amazing, because beyond that, everyone knows that they couldn't last a war with NATO. It's not even a question. It's not even a contest. It's not even like it would be an upset like Ukraine, like, oh, look, you know, NATO pushed into Russia, and oh my God, here comes the chair. You know, they whipped out the steel chair. That's not happening with them. Like, they would literally just get steamrolled. There's nothing they could do, especially being stretched as thin as they are in Ukraine already. If they started a war with NATO, NATO would probably roll into Russia with very little opposition and reach St. Petersburg and be well onto the way to Moscow by the time the Russians rolled out the nukes and just started dropping tactical nukes all over the place and then leading into a nuclear holocaust. So I don't know why they say that. I think it's really just for the propaganda purposes to the Russian public. But with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with all of y'all tonight, running this stream, and not only that, running this fundraiser. The Lee Spring Army was able to raise a whopping $8.4 thousand tonight. Several $1,000s, actually $3.4 thousand over the second fundraiser goal. The original fundraiser goal tonight was $3,000. The second fundraiser goal was $5,000. And y'all still beat the second fundraiser goal by $3.4 thousand. That is amazing and incredible. It's one of the largest fundraisers that we've had in a while, and I am completely honored to know that we were able to do that tonight to help out folks in Ukraine with Razom. Of course, I will see you all again on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news, well, actually the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. But if you did enjoy tonight and you want to see more, make sure to subscribe and make sure to like, because we will be back on Tuesday to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks, and a personal big thank you for knocking that fundraiser out of the park tonight, and we'll see you all on Tuesday night. Get some rest, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and of course, good night.
And a huge shout out to Trister who threw in 100, but long live the Lee Spring Army. Hey!
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.